The waitress who walked into the lion's den. They laughed at her before she even set down the wine. A plain girl in a cheap black apron serving the most dangerous man in the city. His men whispered she'd never survive one night in their world, so he invited her to the gala just to watch her break. What they didn't know was that the quietest woman in the room had already decided she was done shrinking. And when those doors finally opened, the empire built on cruelty would learn what silence really sounded like. If you're watching from anywhere in the world right now, drop your city in the comments so I know how far this story has traveled. Hit that like button, stay with me until the very end, because trust me, you're going to want to see how this one ends. The rain hit Blackwood Avenue the way it always did in late October, sideways, mean, and without asking permission. Maya Bennett pulled the collar of her thin coat higher and ducked her head against the wind, her sneakers already soaked through from the 3-block walk from the bus stop. The heel on her left shoe had started coming loose 2 days ago. She hadn't had the $12 to get it fixed, and now the rubber was slapping wet against the pavement with every step, sounding like applause from a very tired audience. She counted the streetlights on the way to work. She always did. 17 between the bus stop and the back service entrance of the Meridian. It was a habit she'd picked up as a kid, counting things to keep her mind from drifting to places it shouldn't go. 17 lights, 8 cracked sidewalk squares, 3 cigarette butts still smoldering in the gutter because someone had tossed them only a minute before she walked past. 22 years old, and Maya Bennett had already learned that staying small was a form of survival. She slipped through the service door at 4:47 p.m., 13 minutes early for her shift. The kitchen hit her the way it always did, a wall of heat, clanging pans, the sharp bark of Chef Marco yelling at someone about the duck. She kept her head down, hung her coat on the hook marked with a strip of masking tape that said Bennett in black Sharpie, and headed for the staff bathroom to change her shoes. "You're dripping on my floor, Bennett." Raul, the kitchen porter, was mopping near the walk-in. He didn't look up when he said it, but there was the faintest smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Raul was 61, originally from somewhere in Guatemala he never talked about, and he was maybe the only person in the building who actually seemed to notice when Maya came and went. "Sorry, Raul." "Don't be sorry, be dry." She laughed quietly, the first laugh she'd had all day, and kept moving. In the bathroom, she traded her wet sneakers for the black flats she kept in her locker. The flats were scuffed at the toes, and the inner lining was starting to peel. She'd glued it back down twice. She pulled her hair into a low bun, the way Mr. Lowell, the general manager, required, and straightened the cheap polyester apron over her white button-down. She looked at herself in the mirror for exactly 2 seconds. That was all she allowed. Any longer, and the list would start. Nose too long, eyes too tired, lipstick you can't afford, skin too pale from working nights, everything about you. 2 seconds. That was the rule. She killed the light and walked back out. The Meridian wasn't the most expensive restaurant in the city. It was the most exclusive, which wasn't the same thing. You didn't walk in off the street. You called 2 weeks ahead, and if you weren't on a certain list, the hostess politely informed you that there was nothing available. Ever. The dining room sat 58 people on a busy night, and each of those 58 paid roughly what Maya made in a month, just to sit in a leather booth and be handed a menu without prices printed on the women's copies. She'd been working this for 19 months. In that time, she had served governors, network anchors, a man whose name was on 3 buildings downtown, and one aging actor who'd pinched her waist when she'd leaned over to refill his water. She'd straightened up, smiled the smile Mr. Lowell had trained her to smile, and never mentioned it to anyone. She'd learned early on that the Meridian had 2 kinds of employees, the ones who existed and the ones who didn't. Maya didn't. Bennett. Mr. Lowell's voice was the kind of voice that belonged to a man who thought turning 55 was an accomplishment the world should acknowledge. He stood at the service station with his hands clasped behind his back, surveying the dining room like a general before a battle he was certain he would win. "Section 4 tonight, both booths. You're on the hail party." Her stomach did a slow, careful turn. "Mr. Lowell, You what?" "I was on the hail party last Thursday. I thought Celeste was supposed to." "Celeste is on 3 Tops tonight. You're on the hail party. Is there a problem?" She swallowed. "No. No problem." "Good." He looked at her for another half-second, and she could feel him cataloging every flaw. The slight fray on her collar, the cheap bobby pins holding her hair, The way her earrings were the little gold studs her mother had given her for her 16th birthday, when her mother had still been able to afford small gifts. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't smile unless they smile first. If Mr. Hale asks you anything, keep your answers to 10 words or fewer. Am I being clear? Yes, Mr. Lowell. Go. She went. She made her way through the dining room with the quiet, invisible grace of a woman who had been taught invisibility the hard way. Past the couple in the corner booth celebrating an anniversary neither of them looked happy about. Past the two businessmen splitting $1,000 bottle of Barolo and arguing in low, venomous whispers about a contract. Past the table of 6 where a woman in a yellow dress was laughing too loudly at a joke her husband wasn't making. The private dining room was at the back of the restaurant. Thick velvet curtain, polished brass handles, a small brass plaque on the door that said reserved, in a font that had been designed in Italy in 1912. Maya paused in front of it, closed her eyes for one breath, and pushed it open. Dominic Hale was already there. He was always already there. He never came in through the main dining room. There was a private elevator from the parking garage that went straight to the private room, and Maya had never seen him use any other door. He sat at the head of the long oak table with his back to the far wall, the way men like him always sat, never facing a door he couldn't see. Tonight he wore a charcoal suit, no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. His dark hair was cut short on the sides and longer on top, combed back neatly but not obsessively so. He had the kind of face that people described later with words they weren't sure they meant. Handsome wasn't quite right, because handsome was a soft word, and there was nothing soft about Dominic Hale. He was 34 years old, 6'2", with eyes the color of wet slate and a mouth that didn't smile unless he had a reason to smile. 4 men sat around the table with him. Maya had served all 4 of them before. She knew their faces the way a small animal knows the face of a hawk. Victor Marzano, to Dominic's right. Older, maybe 50. Thick in the shoulders, with a scar that ran from his left ear down under his collar. He was the one who always ordered the ribeye, bloody, and who had never once looked a waitress in the eye in his entire life. Across from Victor sat Anthony Tony Russo, the youngest of the group, maybe 28, with slicked back hair and a watch that cost more than Maya's apartment would cost her for a year. Tony liked to talk. Tony liked to be heard talking. 2 seats down was Silas Cade, a lean, bald man whose voice came out in a rasp. He always ordered the sole. He never ate more than 3 bites. And at the far end of the table, farthest from Dominic, sat Benedict Crane, a gray-haired man in his 60s with the soft, watery eyes of someone's grandfather and the hands of someone who had never worked a day outside of an office in his life. Maya knew from overheard conversation that Benedict was the lawyer. Every family like this had a lawyer. Benedict was theirs. "Good evening," Maya said, pitching her voice just high enough to be heard and just low enough to not disturb. "May I start you gentlemen off with drinks?" Tony Russo's head swung toward her first, and his eyes did the thing she hated. That slow, appraising slide from her shoes up to her face, lingering in the middle. A small smile curled at the edge of his mouth. "Well," he said, "good evening yourself." "Knock it off, Tony," Victor muttered, not looking up from his menu. "What? I'm saying good evening." "You're saying good evening with your eyeballs. Knock it off." Dominic hadn't looked up at all. He was reading something on his phone, his thumb moving slowly across the screen. His face showed nothing. "A bottle of the '09 Barolo," he said, without raising his head. "And the Macallan. Neat, for Mr. Cade. Mr. Crane will have what he had last time." "Of course, sir. And you?" He looked up for the first time. His eyes found hers and held there, not warm, not cold, just present, the way the barrel of a camera lens is present. "What's your name again?" "Maya, sir." "Maya." He said it like he was testing how the word fit in his mouth. "You served us last week." "Yes, sir." "And the week before?" "Yes, sir." He watched her for a second longer, then he went back to his phone. "That's all, Maya." She left the room with her hands steady because she had learned how to make them steady, and her breathing even because she had learned how to make it even. In the hallway she exhaled, just once, and then she moved. Back at the wine station, she pulled the Barolo from the cage, checked the vintage twice, and carried it in her right hand with a cloth folded over her wrist. She already knew the Scotch pour. She already knew Benedict Crane drank a very specific old-fashioned that required the bartender, Hector, to build it a very specific way. Hector saw her coming and started it without a word. "Crane?" he asked. "Crane. He gonna send it back again?" "Probably." Hector grinned, the kind of grin that lives entirely in the eyes of men who have worked in kitchens too long. "That old bastard." "Hector." "What?" "He is." She half smiled and took the glass. When she carried the tray back into the private dining room, the conversation was already underway, and she already knew, the way a person knows without wanting to know, that she had walked into the middle of something. The men went quiet the way men go quiet when a woman enters a room they were just talking about. Not suddenly, gradually. A sentence trailing off, a laugh cut in half, a look passing between Victor and Tony that they didn't bother to hide. She set the wine on the table. She poured Dominic's glass first. She served Mr. Cade's scotch. She placed the old-fashioned in front of Benedict Crane, who thanked her softly. He always thanked her softly. He was the only one who did. "Miss," Tony said. She turned. "Yes, sir?" "What's your last name?" She hesitated. She didn't know why he was asking. She didn't want to answer. But she'd been trained, and Mr. Lowell was somewhere in this building, and the rent was due in 11 days. "Bennett, sir." "Maya Bennett." Tony rolled it around in his mouth the way he'd rolled his eyes over her earlier. "Where you from, Maya Bennett?" "East Side, sir." "East Side." He glanced at Victor. Victor was watching his wine. "That's... what, Fulton?" "Greer?" "Greer, sir." "Greer." Tony whistled through his teeth. "Rough neighborhood, Greer." "May I take your order, sir, or would you prefer a few more minutes?" "Oh, we'll need a few more minutes." "Of course." She turned to leave. "Hey, Maya." She paused at the door. "Yes, sir?" "You got a boyfriend, Maya Bennett?" The silence in the room was the kind of silence that had weight. Even Dominic finally looked up from his phone. His eyes moved to Tony, then to her, then back to Tony, and something happened in his face that wasn't quite anger, wasn't quite amusement. Something more like a man watching a dog approach a snake. "I'm sorry, sir," Maya said. Her voice stayed level. She had practice. "I'm not permitted to share personal information." "Permitted?" Tony laughed. "That's cute." "Tony," Victor said. "What?" "I'm making conversation." "Let the girl work." She left before anyone could stop her again. She walked down the hall, past the service station, into the back pantry where no one would see her, and she set her hands flat on the cold steel counter and breathed through her nose for 8 slow seconds. Count of 8 in, count of 8 out. A thing she had learned from a pamphlet at the community clinic 3 years ago, back when the panic attacks had been worse. She was fine. She was fine. She was fine. Celeste walked past the pantry door, saw her, stopped, walked back. "Hey." Maya straightened. "Hey. You okay?" "I'm fine." "You're not fine." "Celeste, I'm fine." Celeste Moreno was 28, divorced, with a son named Eli, who was 6 and had asthma. She had been at the Meridian for 4 years, and she was the only server there who had ever treated Maya like a human being instead of furniture. Celeste pushed into the pantry, pulled the door half closed behind her, and crossed her arms. "Who's in for?" "Hail party." "Oh, honey. It's fine." "Which one of them said something?" "Russo." "Russo's a pig." "I know." "Russo is a pig who thinks he's a prince." "I know, Celeste." Celeste studied her for a second longer. Then she reached up and adjusted one of the bobby pins in Maya's hair, tucking a loose strand back into place, the way a mother would. Maya let her. For one small moment, she let someone touch her hair. "You need me to take the table?" "Lowell won't let you." "I'll handle Lowell." "No." Maya shook her head. "No, it's fine. I just needed a second." "You sure?" "I'm sure." Celeste watched her a beat longer. "Okay. But if Russo touches you, I'm going in there with a steak knife." "Celeste, I'm serious." "I know you are. That's why I'm saying your name." Celeste snorted, squeezed her elbow, and slipped back out. Maya closed her eyes, breathed, and then she went back to work. The first course came out at 6:52. Oysters for Dominic, carpaccio for Victor, a small salad for Mr. Cade, who was watching his cholesterol, and an heirloom tomato plate for Benedict Crane, who had once mentioned that his wife, his late wife, Maya had gathered, had loved tomatoes. Tony Russo had ordered the pâté, which he ate with the enthusiasm of a man who had never been told no in his life. Maya moved through the service quietly. Refill water, step back. Refill wine, step back. Clear the oyster plate, step back. She did not look at Dominic. She felt him looking at her, though, not constantly, not obviously. But every now and then, while she was pouring, she would feel the weight of his attention settle briefly on the side of her face, and then lift, and then settle again a minute later. He didn't speak to her. He didn't need to. It was when she stepped out to put in the entree order that it happened. She was at the service station, tapping the order into the tablet. 2 ribeyes, 1 sole, 1 lamb, 1 duck, 1 branzino. When she realized she'd left the wine cloth back in the pantry, she turned to go get it, and the private dining room door was ajar. Not open. Ajar. 2 inches. Just enough for the conversation on the other side to carry. She should have kept walking. She didn't. "I'm just saying, Dom," Tony's voice was saying, low but not low enough. "It's insulting. Every week they send us the same little mouse. What, they can't afford a real waitress?" "Watch your mouth," Victor's voice said. "What? You agree with me? Look at her. She's got 1 apron and a busted pair of shoes." "So she's poor, so what? So what? Come on, Vic. You know what? This is the Meridian. We're the Meridian. We pay what we pay to come here. We get a girl who looks like she's been crying in her car." A short laugh from someone. Silas Cade, maybe. Maya couldn't tell. "She's quiet, she's clean, she does her job," Victor said. "What else you want?" "I want somebody who isn't going to look at Dom like she's going to cry if he breathes on her." "Jesus, Tony. I'm saying she doesn't belong in a room like this. You could drop her in front of the governor tomorrow and she'd shatter into 12 pieces. There's a reason she's holding a tray and not sitting at the table, you know what I mean?" A pause. Then Tony, lower, meaner. "She's not even pretty, Dom. I'm being honest. Not ugly. Just nothing. She's wallpaper, you know what I mean? She's the kind of girl a man walks past his whole life without ever seeing once." Maya's hand stopped moving on the tablet. Her face did not change. Her shoulders did not move. If anyone had walked past her at that moment, they would have seen a young waitress quietly entering an order, nothing more. But inside her chest, something very small and very tired made a sound. Not a sob, not a scream. Just a sound. Like a door being closed somewhere far away. She had heard worse in her life. She had. She'd heard worse from the foster father she'd lived with at 15, the one who had told her every morning for 8 months that she was lucky anyone had taken her in at all. She'd heard worse from her mother on the bad nights, before the bad nights had stopped because her mother had stopped. She'd heard worse from the boys at the group home, from the manager of her first job, from the landlord who had once told her that girls like her could always work something out if rent was short. Tony Russo wasn't saying anything she hadn't heard. It shouldn't have hurt. But there was something about the specific casual way he said it. "She's wallpaper." Like he wasn't even insulting her. Like he was just stating a fact, like calling the sky blue. Inside the room, Dominic Hale finally spoke. "You done, Tony?" I asked if you were done." The tone in Dominic's voice was not loud. It didn't need to be. It was the tone of a man who did not raise his voice because he had never, in his entire adult life, needed to. It was a tone that cut the air in the room in half. "Yeah, I'm done." "Good." Silence. Then, quieter, a different voice. "Victor," Maya thought. "She's a human being, Tony. You talk about people like that again at a table I'm sitting at, and we're going to have a problem. Vic, come on. I said we're going to have a problem." "Yeah. Okay, sorry." A longer silence. Then Tony again, because Tony Russo was the kind of man who could not sit inside a silence without trying to fill it with himself. I'll tell you what. You want me to eat my words? Here's what we do. The Vance Gala. Saturday. Bring her." "What?" "Bring her. The little mouse. Our waitress. Put her in a dress, put her in that room, and watch her melt. I'll bet you anything. Anything. She won't make it to the second drink before she cracks. Girls like that, they don't belong in rooms like that. They know it. She'll know it the second she walks in. Tony, that's not... No, I'm serious. I'll put money on it. Real money. If she shows up and survives the night, I eat crow. Every one of you gets to watch me eat it. But she won't. She won't even show. A girl like that? She'll get the invitation and she'll cry in her apartment and throw it in the trash. Bet you. 10 grand. Jesus Christ, Tony. What? It's fun. It's a bet, Dom. Come on. Tell me that isn't fun. Silence. Maya had not moved. Her hand was still on the tablet. Her face was still the face of a young woman entering an order. She didn't breathe. Dominic Hale spoke again, and this time, for the first time, his voice had something in it she hadn't heard before. Not anger, not amusement, curiosity. 10 grand, he said slowly, is nothing to me, Tony. So you're in. A pause. I'll do it, Dominic said. Not for 10 grand, for the lesson. What lesson? The lesson you're about to learn, Tony, when a girl like that walks into a room like that and makes you look like the fool you are. Tony laughed. It was a short, uncertain laugh. The laugh of a man who didn't quite understand what had just been said to him, but knew he'd been mocked in it somewhere. You think she'd survive? I don't know what she'd do, Dominic said. Neither do you. That's the point. So you'll invite her? I'll invite her. Saturday. Saturday. Oh, this is going to be good. Tony, Victor's voice, low, warning. I swear to God, if you make this girl cry, I will drag you out of that ballroom by your collar myself. Relax, relax. It's a bet. It's harmless. It's not harmless. It's harmless. Maya, in the hallway, finally moved. She finished entering the order. She set the tablet down. She smoothed the front of her apron. She turned and she walked calmly, the way she had been trained, back toward the private dining room. She paused at the door. She took one breath. She pushed it open. Everything is going well with your first course, gentlemen? 5 men looked up at her. Tony Russo's smile was too wide. Victor's eyes were on his wine. Silas Cade had the glassy, disinterested look of a man thinking about his stock portfolio. Benedict Crane smiled at her gently, the way he always did, like someone's grandfather. Dominic Hale was watching her, really watching her this time, not glancing, watching, and his eyes had something in them that hadn't been there before. She realized, with the cold clarity of a person who has learned to read a room because her survival has often depended on it, that he was wondering whether she had heard. She smiled, small, polite, empty. May I clear your plates? Please, Dominic said. She cleared the plates. She refilled the water. She stepped back against the wall in the way servers step back against a wall, quiet and absent. And in her head, not loud, not angry, the smallest voice she had was already speaking. They're going to invite you to a party, to laugh at you. She didn't know yet what she was going to do. She just knew, for the first time in a very long time, that something inside her had started to listen. The entrees came out at 7:34. Maya served them the way she served everything, quietly, correctly, without flourish. Dominic had ordered the duck. He always ordered the duck. He cut into it with the clean, precise movements of a man who had been taught, as a boy, which fork to use for which course, and who had not forgotten. Tony Russo was telling a story now, loud and expansive, about a woman he'd met in Miami, and the table was laughing. The laughter of men who had already drunk enough wine to laugh at anything. She moved around them like water. Refill. Step back. Refill. Step back. She felt Dominic looking at her again. This time, when she turned to leave, he spoke. Maya. She paused. Yes, sir? A moment, please. The table went quiet. Tony's story cut off. Victor set down his fork. Silas Cade's eyes moved slowly to the head of the table, the way the eyes of a man who has seen a lot of strange things in his life move to the next strange thing. Of course, sir. Dominic dabbed at his mouth with his napkin. He set the napkin down. He looked up at her. His eyes, in the low light of the private room, were not slate. They were darker than slate. They were the color of a river at night. This Saturday, the Vance Foundation is hosting a gala. It's held at the Thornbury Hotel, the ballroom on the 42nd floor. Black tie. I would like you to attend as my guest. The silence in the room was absolute. Tony Russo, to his credit, was trying not to smile and failing. Victor Marzano's jaw had tightened. Silas Cade was now watching Maya with the mild interest of an anthropologist studying a small, strange bird. Benedict Crane had gone very, very still. Maya looked down at Dominic Hale, and for one long, suspended moment, she did not speak. She thought about a lot of things in that moment. She thought about her mother, who had died at 41 of a heart that had simply decided it was tired. She thought about the pamphlet at the community clinic, count of 8 in, count of 8 out. She thought about her apartment, which had a broken radiator she had been trying to get the super to fix for 3 weeks. She thought about Celeste, who had adjusted her hair in the pantry because there was no one else in Maya's life to adjust her hair. She thought about Raoul mopping the floor. She thought about the 17 streetlights. She thought about Tony Russo's voice. She's wallpaper. She's the kind of girl a man walks past his whole life without ever seeing once. And she thought, with a clarity that surprised her, no. Not no to the invitation, just no. To the entire architecture of her own smallness. She lifted her eyes to Dominic Hale's. Her voice, when it came, was not loud. It was not triumphant. It was quiet and level, the way her voice had always been. I would be honored, sir. The silence after her answer lasted maybe 2 full seconds. Then Tony Russo laughed, a short, surprised bark, because he had not actually thought she would say yes. Victor Marzano exhaled through his nose. Silas Cade tilted his head just slightly, the way a man tilts his head when a coin he has flipped has landed unexpectedly on its edge. Benedict Crane looked up at her with something in his gray, watery eyes that might have been sadness, or might have been a warning, or might have been something older than either. He did not speak. And Dominic Hale, for a moment so brief that later she would wonder if she had imagined it, did not look like the most dangerous man in the city. He looked like a man who had just made a bet, and who had just realized too late that he might have underestimated what he was betting on. Then his face smoothed over. Good, he said. A car will come for you on Saturday, 7 p.m. Mr. Crane will make the arrangements. He paused. What is your address? 1247 Ellison Street, apartment 4B. Thank you, Maya. That will be all. Of course, sir. She turned. She walked to the door. She pushed it open. She stepped out into the hallway. And only when the door closed behind her did she let herself stop for 1 second only, against the wall, with one hand pressed flat against the wood. She did not cry. She did not smile. She did not breathe hard. She just stood there and listened to her own heart, which had started beating in a way she had never heard it beat before. Not fast, loud. She had 48 hours. She didn't own a dress. She didn't own shoes. She didn't have the money to own a dress or shoes. She had $163 in her checking account, and she had a bus ticket home, and she had the name of every streetlight between the bus stop and the Meridian, and she was about to walk into a ballroom on the 42nd floor of the Thornbury Hotel with the most dangerous man in the city, because 5 men in a back room had decided she was wallpaper. She pushed herself off the wall. She smoothed her apron. She walked back into the dining room to clear the next plate. Behind the private dining room door, Tony Russo was already saying, "Oh, this is going to be the funniest goddamn thing I've ever seen in my life." And Dominic Hale was not laughing. He was looking at the closed door, at the space where she had been, with the faintest crease between his brows, the way a man looks at a lock he has just picked and realized, upon opening, that the room on the other side is not the room he was told to expect. He picked up his wine glass. He did not drink. He set it back down. And 42 floors above the city, the ballroom at the Thornbury was already being prepared for Saturday, the chandeliers being dusted, the floors being polished, the long velvet ropes being arranged along a red carpet that had already welcomed senators, oil heirs, the mayor's daughter, and 2 men whose names appeared on no list and would never be indexed by any public record. On Saturday, at 7:47 p.m., a pair of doors at the top of a marble staircase would open, and the room would go quiet. But that was Saturday. Tonight, in a back hallway of a restaurant with 17 streetlights between it and the bus stop, a 22-year-old waitress named Maya Bennett walked quietly back to the service station, picked up the next tray, and went to work. She did not know yet what she was going to do, but somewhere, very small, very deep, a door that had been closed her whole life had finally, quietly, started to open. And on the other side of that door, for the first time, she could hear her own footsteps. She finished her shift at 11:42 that night. The last table in her section had been a couple celebrating their 40th anniversary. A quiet, gray-haired pair who had held hands across the tablecloth between courses and who had, at the end of the meal, left her a tip that was almost twice the cost of the meal itself. The old man had pressed the folded bills into her palm and held her hand for one extra second. "You take care of yourself," he'd said. "You hear me?" She hadn't been sure why he'd said it. She'd nodded anyway. "Yes, sir." "I mean it. A girl your age. There's a whole life in front of you." "Yes, sir. Thank you." He had nodded once, and then his wife had taken his arm, and they had walked out together, and Maya had stood holding the folded bills for a long moment before she'd put them in her apron pocket. She counted them in the staff bathroom after clockout, $140. She stared at it in her hand under the flickering fluorescent light and felt something heavy settle into her chest. Not gratitude, exactly. Something stranger. The feeling that the universe, which had never seemed to notice her much before, had perhaps noticed her tonight. Tossed her a coin. The way you toss a coin to a street musician you happen to like. She slid the bills into the inside pocket of her coat, zipped it shut, and walked out into the rain. The bus on the way home was almost empty. A woman at the back was sleeping with her forehead against the window, a grocery bag between her feet. A man in a reflective work vest was staring at his phone. Maya sat in the middle, her wet hair sticking to the side of her neck, her hands folded in her lap, and she looked at her reflection in the dark glass. The bus lights made her face look yellow, tired. Older than 22. She's wallpaper. She closed her eyes. She's the kind of girl a man walks past his whole life without ever seeing once. She opened them. And somewhere between Bryson Avenue and the stop at the corner of her street, she made a decision. It wasn't a loud decision. It wasn't a defiant one. It was quieter than that. It was the decision a person makes when they have been quietly deciding for a very long time to not decide anything at all, and suddenly they are done with that. She was going to that gala. She didn't know how yet. She didn't know with what money. She didn't know in what dress. But she was going. And she was not going to fall apart. And she was not going to cry in her apartment and throw the invitation in the trash. And Tony Russo was not going to win his bet. Because this, she realized, somewhere between Bryson and her stop, was not actually about Tony Russo. It was about every voice that had ever told her to make herself smaller. Her foster father, her old manager, the boys at the group home, the landlord, Mr. Lowell, the slow, steady, invisible weight of a life that had spent 22 years teaching her that she was lucky to be allowed to exist in the first place, and that the correct thanks she owed the world for this luck was to stay quiet, stay small, stay grateful, and never want anything. She was tired of not wanting anything. The bus hissed to a stop at the corner of Ellison. Maya stood, gripped the rail, and stepped out into the rain. Her apartment was on the 4th floor of a walk-up that had been beautiful in 1923 and had been neglected consistently since approximately 1971. The stairwell smelled like old carpet and somebody's microwave dinner from 3 hours ago. The light on the second landing had been out for 6 weeks. She climbed in the half-dark, her left shoe still slapping wet against the stairs, and let herself into 4B. The apartment was cold. The radiator under the window clanked once, sympathetically, and then went silent again, the way it did. Maya didn't turn on the overhead light. She kicked off her shoes, hung up her coat, pulled the bills out of the inside pocket, and walked into the kitchenette to set them on the counter under the little pendant lamp she kept there. $140. Plus the $163 in her checking account, $303. She stared at the money under the yellow light, and for one brief, terrible moment, the old voice started in her head. "You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this on $300. They'll see. They'll all see. They'll smell the rental tag. They'll see the cheap shoes. They'll know. You'll walk in and you'll freeze and you'll..." She shut the voice off. She picked up her phone. It was 12:14 a.m. She texted Celeste. "Are you up?" The reply came back in 90 seconds. "For you, always. What's wrong? Can I come over tomorrow? I need help with something." "What kind of something?" Maya stared at the screen. Her thumbs hovered over the keys. "I need to learn how to walk into a room." There was a long pause. Then, "Be here at 10. Bring coffee." Maya set the phone down. She walked into her bedroom, which was really a converted sun porch the landlord had called a bedroom on the lease. She lay down on top of the comforter in her work clothes because she was suddenly too tired to change, and she stared at the ceiling. The ceiling had a water stain shaped a little like a whale. She had been looking at that water stain for 19 months. "Okay," she said quietly to nothing. Then she closed her eyes. At 9:47 the next morning, she stood in a corner bodega buying 2 large coffees from a Dominican man named Luis, who always gave her an extra sugar packet because he'd decided at some point that Maya was too skinny. The morning was gray and bright at the same time, the sky the color of a dirty dish, and she walked 6 blocks with the 2 coffees held carefully in a cardboard tray, and she climbed the stairs to Celeste's apartment above the dry cleaners on Fulton and knocked. Celeste opened the door in a robe. Her hair was up in a towel. Her eyes were sharp. "Get in here." "Where's Eli?" "With my mother." "Get in here. You look like you didn't sleep." "I didn't." "I figured." Celeste's apartment was small, warm, cluttered in the specific way of a small apartment lived in hard by a mother and a 6-year-old boy. There were crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator, a soccer cleat by the door, a stuffed dinosaur missing one eye sitting on the coffee table like a guest. Celeste took one of the coffees, took a long sip, set it down, crossed her arms, and said, "Talk." Maya talked. She told her everything. The private dining room, the door that had been left ajar, Tony Russo's voice. She's wallpaper. The bet. $10,000. Dominic Hale's invitation, her address, Saturday at 7, the Thornberry, the 42nd floor. When she finished, Celeste didn't speak for a long time. She sat down slowly on the edge of her coffee table. She looked at the dinosaur. She looked at Maya. "Sweetheart," she said finally, very softly, "do you understand what you're telling me?" "I think so." "Do you understand who Dominic Hale is? I know what people say about him." "Listen to me. Listen." Celeste leaned forward. "What they say about him is the nice version. The version they say out loud. The actual version is worse. The actual version, okay? Girls who get tangled up with men like him don't come back the same. Not even when nothing physical happens. They just don't. They come back with something in their eyes that used to not be there. I'm not getting tangled up with him. You're walking into his ballroom. On his arm. On his arm is tangled up, Maya. I know. Do you?" Maya looked down at her coffee. She turned the cup once in her hands. "Celeste, I heard them. Through the door. I heard them make a bet on me. Like I was a dog race." Her voice did not shake. She made sure of that. "I have been making myself small for 22 years. I don't even know how to not do it anymore. I wake up small. I walk to the bus small. I serve food small. I go home small. I sleep small." "Maya, he invited me because he thought I'd say no. Or because he thought I'd say yes and fall apart. And the thing is, Celeste, the thing is, if I don't go, he's right. They're all right. Tony Russo is right. And I will have spent my entire life so far proving Tony Russo right." Celeste watched her. "And I'm not going," Maya said, "for him. I'm not going for any of them. I'm not even going to win. I'm going because the girl I was yesterday was going to throw the invitation in the trash and cry, and I don't want to be her anymore." Silence. Celeste exhaled slowly through her nose. She leaned back on her hands on the coffee table. The dinosaur wobbled. "Okay. Okay. Okay. You're not going to tell me not to? I already told you not to. You didn't listen. Now we move." Celeste stood up. "How much money do you have?" $303. "Oh, Jesus. I know." Okay. We can work with $300. We can. Sit down. Drink your coffee. I need to think." Maya sat. Celeste paced. "Okay, rule 1. You do not rent a dress. Nothing says broke like a rental tag at a black tie. Rule 2. We are not shopping retail. Retail is for people with real money. Rule 3. She stopped. She looked at Maya. "Rule 3 is you tell me your size and you let me do what I'm about to do." "What are you about to do?" "I'm about to call my Aunt Louisa." "Who's Aunt Louisa?" Celeste sat down on the arm of the couch. For the first time that morning, she actually smiled. It was a small, crooked, almost embarrassed smile. My Aunt Louisa was a tailor at the Opera House for 31 years. She retired last winter. She's 73, she has the mouth of a sailor, and she has a closet full of altered samples and garment bag rejects that she has been carrying home for 3 decades because she can't stand to see good fabric go in the trash. Maya stared at her. What? Baby, my Aunt Louisa has, in her spare bedroom in Bay Ridge, probably 400 gowns that have never been worn in public and that are worth more than my car. Most of them don't fit a human being without alteration, because they were made for sopranos with specific shoulders, but she can alter anything on a person in 4 hours. That's not a brag, that's just what she does. Celeste. Yeah? You're telling me there is a 73-year-old woman in Bay Ridge who's going to take one look at you and decide whether or not she likes you. And if she likes you, she is going to dress you for Saturday. If she doesn't like you, we're screwed and you're going to Ross Dress for Less with me tomorrow and we're going to pretend hard. Will she like me? Celeste looked at her for a long moment. Yeah, she said quietly. She'll like you. She picked up her phone. She walked into the kitchen. Maya heard her speaking low, rapid Spanish for about 4 minutes. She heard Celeste laugh once. She heard Celeste say very distinctly, Tia, escúchame, por favor. Celeste came back in. We're going Thursday. Thursday? Thursday afternoon. She needs a day to pull stuff. Then Friday she'll alter. Saturday morning final fitting. Saturday evening you go to the ball, Cinderella. I can pay her. You can't pay her. Celeste, I can... Maya. Celeste looked at her. She doesn't charge anybody. Not me, not my mother, not anybody. She charged the Opera House for 31 years, and she says she's done charging people. You'll show up, you'll be polite, you'll eat the food she puts in front of you, and you'll let her dress you. That's the deal. Maya felt something very small and very tight release in her chest. She had to look down at the coffee cup for a second. She had to look down because her eyes had started to do something she didn't want them to do in front of anyone. Celeste, to her credit, pretended not to notice. She sat down, picked up her own coffee, and sipped. Shoes are the problem, Celeste said, like nothing had happened. Maya wiped her face once, quickly, with the back of her hand. I don't have shoes. I know you don't have shoes. We'll figure out shoes. I have a pair of black heels from my cousin's wedding 2 years ago. If they fit you, they fit you. They're not designer, but they're black and they're real leather, and nobody at a black tie ever actually looks at a woman's shoes if the rest of her is right. Celeste. What? Thank you. Celeste looked at her over the rim of her coffee cup. You don't thank me, she said. Not for this. You walk into that room Saturday night and you stand up straight and you breathe. That's how you thank me. You stand up straight and you breathe, and you don't let any of those sons of bitches see you small. Maya nodded. I won't. Good. Celeste set down her coffee. Now, she said, let's talk about walking. Oh, that's it. Maya had not known, before that morning, that there were 7 different ways to walk into a room, and that 6 of them were wrong. Celeste made her practice in the living room. She made her practice from the door to the couch, from the couch to the window, from the window to the kitchen. She made her practice with a book on her head. She made her practice without a book on her head. She made her practice slow. She made her practice what she called normal, which was not slow, but was also not fast. Stop bouncing. Don't look at the floor. Eyes forward. Soft eyes. Not staring. Soft. What's soft? Like you just saw something pleasant, but you're not going to point it out. I don't know what that looks like. Think about Raoul mopping the floor last night when he called you dripping. Maya thought about it. She half smiled. There. There it is. That face. That's the face. That's the face? That's the face. Go back to the door. Do it again. They worked for 3 hours. By the end of it, Maya's calves hurt. Her jaw hurt from Celeste correcting it, and she was fairly certain she was worse at walking than she had been at the start. Celeste gave her a glass of water, sat her down on the couch, and said, Okay, now the important part. There's a more important part. There is a more important part. Celeste sat on the coffee table across from her, knees almost touching Maya's. Listen, every woman who walks into that room Saturday is going to be beautiful. Every single one. They're going to have hair like glass and skin like it's never seen a bad day and dresses that cost more than this whole building. You are not going to out-beautiful them. You understand me? Maya nodded. You're going to out-calm them. Out-calm them? Out-calm them. Out-still them. Out-quiet them. Because every single one of those women, Maya, every single one, is terrified. They're terrified of being the second most beautiful woman in the room. They're terrified of their husband's hand on the waist of someone else. They're terrified their earrings aren't real enough. They're terrified of aging out. They are terrified, and they cover it up with makeup and noise and laughing too loud. And you're going to walk in and not be terrified, and they will feel it. I promise you, Maya. They will feel it before they see you. A woman can smell unafraid on another woman from across a ballroom. Celeste, I'm going to be terrified. I know you're going to be terrified. I'm not asking you to not be terrified. I'm asking you to not show it. You've been not showing it your whole life. You're very good at this. Do you know how much practice you already have at not showing it? Maya looked down at her hands. 19 months of Mr. Lowell, she said quietly. 19 months of Mr. Lowell. And before that, all the rest of it. You have more practice at this than any woman in that ballroom, Maya. I'm serious. You've been graduate schooling at not showing it for your entire life. Maya laughed, a small, surprised laugh. That's a terrible way to frame my trauma. It's a useful way. Yeah, it is. Celeste reached out and took Maya's hand. Listen to me. Listen. You don't say a lot. You hear everything. When people try to trip you up Saturday, and they will try, you don't come back fast. You come back slow. You let the room wait for you. Silence is a weapon, and nobody there knows how to use it except you. Trust me. Slow. Slow. Okay. And if Tony Russo says one word to you, one word, you look at him like you're looking at a stain on a tablecloth, like you're not sure if it's going to come out. Don't say anything. Just look. Let him drown in it. Maya did laugh at that, a real laugh. Okay. Okay. Celeste squeezed her hand and let go. Now go home. Eat something. Sleep early. Tomorrow is Thursday. Tomorrow we meet Aunt Louisa. And on Saturday night, Maya Bennett, you're going to walk into the Thornbury Hotel and you are going to ruin some people's evening. I don't want to ruin anyone's evening. Celeste smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was not an unkind smile either. It was the smile of a 28-year-old single mother who had seen a lot of things in her 4 years at the Meridian. Baby, she said, you're not going to have a choice. Maya went home. She climbed the dim stairwell. She let herself into 4B. She sat on her bed. She stared at the whale-shaped water stain on the ceiling for a while. Then, at 4:41 p.m. that Wednesday, her phone buzzed on the bedspread next to her. She looked at it. It was a number she didn't have saved. She opened the message. This is Benedict Crane. I am Mr. Hale's attorney. I will be sending a car for you Saturday at 7 p.m. sharp. The event is black tie. If you have any concerns regarding your attendance, please let me know. My number is this one. Regards. She read it 3 times. Then a minute later, a second message from the same number. Miss Bennett. Off the record. I am asking once. Are you certain you wish to attend this event? She sat with the phone in her hand for a long time. She thought about the old man's face, his soft, watery gray eyes. The way he had thanked her, quietly, when she had set the old-fashioned in front of him at the table. The way he alone had looked at her, last night, when she'd said, I would be honored, sir. Not with amusement, not with triumph, but with something that had looked very briefly like sadness. She typed back, Yes, Mr. Crane, thank you for asking. The reply came quickly. Very well. I will see you Saturday. Please eat something before the car arrives. These events run long and the hors d'oeuvres are not meant to be a meal. Maya read the message twice. She almost laughed. She typed, Thank you. I will. She set the phone down. She looked at the ceiling again. The whale had not moved, but something in her chest had. Thursday afternoon, Celeste drove her out to Bay Ridge in a 2004 Toyota Camry with a cracked windshield and a child's booster seat still in the back. The drive took an hour in traffic. Maya watched the city slide past through the smeared glass, rows of brick, deli awnings, old ladies pulling wire shopping carts, kids in school uniforms cutting through schoolyards on their way somewhere. She had almost never been to this part of the city. She realized, with a small quiet sting, that she had lived her whole life here and barely ever left a 12-block radius of her own apartment. Aunt Louisa lived on the third floor of a brick row house with a concrete stoop and a small pot of geraniums on the top step. She opened the door in an apron dusted with thread and a pair of reading glasses pushed up into gray hair that had once been black. She was small. She was compact. She had eyes the color of coffee and a mouth that had spent 7 decades refusing to apologize for things. She looked Maya up and down on the doorstep for approximately 4 seconds. Then she said in a thick, unhurried voice, "Come in, mija. You're thinner than Celeste said. That's fine. I can work with thin. Take off your coat." The apartment smelled like sewing machine oil, coffee, and something rich and slow-cooked in the back kitchen. The living room had been converted a long time ago into a kind of studio. A dress form stood in one corner. A Singer machine from 1968 sat on a table by the window. Bolts of fabric were stacked against the wall. The couch had a folded quilt on one arm. And the spare bedroom, when Aunt Louisa pushed open the door, was exactly what Celeste had promised. Garment bags. Dozens of them. Hanging 2 deep on industrial racks. Silks and satins and velvets and beadwork that caught the afternoon light. The room smelled of cedar and lavender and years. Maya stood in the doorway. She didn't speak. "Sit," Aunt Louisa said. "Celeste, make coffee. Mija, sit." Maya sat on the small stool Aunt Louisa pulled into the middle of the room. Aunt Louisa walked around her, slowly. She did not touch her. She just walked, the way a farmer walks around a horse at market, her eyes moving across Maya's shoulders, her collarbone, her waist, her hips, her hands, her hair. It took perhaps 90 seconds. Maya held still. Finally, Aunt Louisa stopped in front of her. "Stand up." Maya stood. Aunt Louisa reached out with 2 hands, put them lightly on Maya's shoulders, and pressed down. Not hard, just enough. "Shoulders back, there. Don't slouch. You don't have to slouch anymore." Maya felt, inexplicably, her eyes go hot. Aunt Louisa pretended not to notice. She stepped back. She turned to the rack. She began pulling garment bags off, one after another, and laying them across the bed. "Celeste, tell her what happened." From the kitchen, Celeste called out the short version. "Private room, bet, invitation, Saturday, the Thornbury." Aunt Louisa made a small sound as Celeste talked. Not a gasp. A sound like, A sound like she had heard this story before, in a different form, with different names. When Celeste finished, Aunt Louisa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, without turning around, "These men, they are all the same, mija." "Ma'am, all the same. Every city, every country, every century, same men." She pulled another garment bag. She laid it across the bed. "I dressed opera singers for 31 years. Do you know who sat in the front row at the opera, mija? Men like this? Every night. Different faces. Same men. They came in furs with their wives. They came in private boxes with girls who weren't their wives. They threw money at the stage and they thought the stage threw back love. It did not throw back love. It threw back art. They never understood the difference." Maya didn't speak. "These men," Aunt Louisa said, "they are afraid, mija." "Afraid?" "Afraid." She turned around. The garment bag in her hand was a deep, deep red. Not bright, not cherry. The red of old wine, the red of a rose pressed between pages of a book for a long time. They buy, and they threaten, and they bet because they are afraid. Afraid they are nothing without the money. Afraid the wife will leave. Afraid the son does not love them. Afraid they will die and be forgotten. So they make noise, so they make bets, so they mock the girl who brings the wine, because if they mock her, she cannot mock them. You understand? Maya nodded slowly. "Tomorrow, you will walk into a room of afraid men. You will not be the most afraid person in the room, mija. You will be the least afraid. You know why?" "Why?" Aunt Louisa smiled. "Because you already lost everything they are afraid of losing." Maya stood there in the middle of the room with the afternoon light coming in through the lace curtain and the smell of cedar and the sound of Celeste in the kitchen opening a drawer, and she felt something inside her chest do something strange. It did not break. It settled. Like a thing that had been sitting crooked on a shelf for a long, long time had finally been nudged by a careful hand into place. "Take off your clothes," Aunt Louisa said briskly. "Down to your slip. Let me see what I'm working with." Maya did. Celeste came in with 2 cups of coffee. She set them down on the dresser and crossed her arms and leaned in the doorway to watch. Aunt Louisa held the deep red gown up against Maya's body. She shook her head. She tossed it on the bed. She pulled another, a midnight blue, heavy with beading at the shoulders. She held it up. She shook her head. She tossed it. She pulled a third. She held it up. She went very still. "Oh," she said quietly. Celeste pushed off the doorway. "That one?" "That one." Maya looked at it. The gown was not red. It was not blue. It was not any color Maya had a clean word for. It was the color of the sky 15 minutes after sunset, in the fall, when the gold has gone and the blue has not come in yet, and the whole thing is a kind of deep, quiet, almost purple dusk. The fabric was heavy and smooth. The neckline was a simple scoop. The sleeves were long and fitted, no beading, no sequins, no ornament, just the fabric, cut close through this bodice and falling straight and long to the floor in a single, uninterrupted line. It was the plainest dress on the bed. It was the most expensive. Maya knew it without being told. "Try it," Aunt Louisa said. Maya stepped into it. The fabric was cold against her skin. Aunt Louisa zipped her up in the back. She turned Maya to face the full-length mirror on the closet door. The woman in the mirror was Maya, but she was also, somehow, not. The dress did not transform her. It didn't make her look like a different person. It just stopped hiding her. It stopped the 1,000 small apologies of cheap fabric and frayed collars and scuffed flats. It stopped the negotiation her body had been doing with the world for a very long time. She looked, for the first time in 22 years, like she had been made on purpose. Celeste exhaled. "Oh, honey." Aunt Louisa stood behind Maya. She met Maya's eyes in the mirror. Her hands rested lightly on Maya's shoulders. "This dress," she said, "was made for a soprano who changed her mind about wearing it. It has been in my closet for 11 years. It has never been worn in public. Do you understand?" Maya nodded. She didn't trust her voice. "It waited for someone." Maya couldn't speak. "It waited for you." Aunt Louisa squeezed her shoulders once. Then she stepped back and became instantly brisk again. "The waist needs to come in a 1/4 inch. The hem, I take up 3/4. Sleeves are good. Neckline is good. Shoulders are perfect, which is a miracle. I will do it tomorrow. You come Saturday at noon, final fit. I press it, you go." "Celeste? Shoes?" "I've got shoes." "Good. Hair?" Celeste looked at Maya. Maya looked back. "I don't know," Maya said. "Down," Aunt Louisa said. "Not up. Up every woman in that room will be. You go down. Simple. Behind one ear. Nothing fancy. You don't need fancy. You have a face, mija. Let them see it." Maya laughed, a startled, wet sound. "Okay. Jewelry?" "The little gold studs my mother gave me." Aunt Louisa went still again. She looked at Maya for a long moment. "Yes," she said quietly. "Those." She turned away then. She started folding the rejected gowns. Her back was to the room. Her hands were very careful. Celeste met Maya's eyes over the older woman's shoulder and gave the smallest nod. Something had happened in that room. Maya would not have the words for it for a long time. It was not a makeover. It was not a fairy tale. It was an old woman in Bay Ridge with 31 years of opera in her hands, quietly doing for a 22-year-old stranger what someone, once, had not done for her. Maya stepped out of the dress. Aunt Louisa took it to her machine. "Saturday at noon," she said without looking up. "Eat breakfast before you come. Something real. Eggs? Not coffee alone, you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Go." They went. In the car on the way home, Celeste didn't speak for a long time. The gray afternoon had started sliding toward evening. The lights of the bridge came on as they crossed. Maya watched them and felt, for the first time in her life, like the city was looking back at her. "Celeste?" "Yeah." "Did you know?" "Know what?" "That she would do that." Celeste was quiet for a long moment. She kept her eyes on the road. "I hoped," she said finally. "I didn't know." "Okay." "Maya." "Yeah. If you get in that ballroom Saturday night and something feels wrong, anything, you text me. You text me one word, you text me out, and I will be outside the Thornberry in 12 minutes. You understand?" Celeste, I can't. You text me out. I don't care what it costs. I don't care what Lowell says Monday. I don't care. You text me out, I come for you. Maya looked over at her. Celeste's jaw was tight. She was not looking away from the road. Okay, Maya said softly. Say it. I'll text you out if it's bad. Good. They drove the rest of the way mostly in silence. The radio played a song from the 90s at low volume. Maya leaned her head against the cool window. Outside, the city moved past. Lit windows, buses pulling away from curbs, a kid on a skateboard cutting through a crosswalk. Somewhere, 42 floors up in a tower on the other side of the river, the ballroom at the Thornberry was being set up for Saturday. The round tables being dressed, the ice sculptures being commissioned, the seating chart being finalized by a woman in a headset who had no idea that a name would be added to it late. A name she would not recognize, a name the staff would have to look up. Bennett M., guest of D. Hale. And somewhere else, in a penthouse office on the top floor of a glass tower downtown, Dominic Hale was sitting at his desk with a glass of bourbon he hadn't touched, looking out at the lights of the city, and thinking about a quiet waitress with steady hands who had looked him in the eye and said, "I would be honored, sir," in a voice that had been a little too level, a little too composed, for a woman who was supposed to have been surprised by the invitation. He had replayed the moment all day. He was a man who read rooms for a living. He read people the way other men read weather. And the more he replayed that small moment in the private dining room, the more he felt. Sitting at his desk, the first faint brush of something he had not felt in a long, long time. Not desire, not yet. Uncertainty. He picked up the bourbon. He set it down. He reached for his phone. He opened his contacts. He scrolled. He paused at a name. Then he put the phone away. Outside his window, the city burned gold and red against the evening. Saturday was 3 days away. He did not know, looking at that skyline, that he had made the first mistake of his life. He did not know yet that the waitress was going to arrive. He did not know that she was going to walk through those doors not as a joke, not as a lesson, not as a girl too small for the room, but as the most composed thing in it. He did not know. Neither did she. But 40 miles away, in a walk-up apartment on Ellison Street, Maya Bennett sat on the edge of her bed in her work clothes at 7:04 on a Thursday evening, and she looked at the ceiling with the whale-shaped water stain on it. And for the first time in a very long time, she did not feel small. She felt like a woman counting down the hours. The hours did not pass quickly. They did not drag either. They moved the way hours move when a person has finally committed to something, each one a small measured weight being set down beside the last. Friday came gray and cold. Maya worked the lunch shift at the Meridian because she had traded her Saturday for it, and Mr. Lowell had stared at her for a long 3 seconds when she'd asked, and then had said in a tight voice, "Fine, Bennett, fine," in a way that suggested he knew something was happening but could not yet name what. He did not say anything else to her that shift. He did not correct her collar. He did not comment on her hair. He watched her, though. She felt it between tables. That was new. Tony Russo did not come in for lunch. Neither did Victor. Neither did Silas Cade. The private dining room sat empty all afternoon, the velvet curtain drawn across the door, and Maya, passing it twice on her way to the bar, felt the oddness of the empty room more than she had felt the fullness of it on Tuesday. Benedict Crane did come in. Alone. At 1:14 p.m., he sat at the small two-top by the window where the older regulars liked to sit, and he ordered a cup of black coffee and a piece of the apple tart that the pastry chef made in-house, and he read a newspaper he'd brought folded under his arm. He did not ask for Maya's section. He was not in Maya's section. He was in Celeste's. But when Maya crossed the floor at 1:32 to drop a check at table 9, Benedict Crane caught her eye across the dining room. He did not wave. He did not smile. He just lifted his coffee cup 2 inches off the saucer toward her and set it back down. A salute. Barely a salute. A private one. Maya did not quite know what to do. She inclined her head toward him, the smallest nod, and kept walking. When she looked up again 30 seconds later, the old man was reading his paper. She passed Celeste at the service station a minute later. "Crane's in?" "I know. He didn't sit in my section." "I know." "Why is that?" Celeste glanced toward the window. Because old men like that, Maya, they come in alone on a Friday afternoon to lay eyes on a young woman they are worried about, and then they leave without making her talk to them. That's what they do. That's the kind of old man he is. Maya stood there a moment. Oh, yeah. Celeste. What? Why is a man like that the lawyer for a man like Hale? Celeste picked up 2 water glasses. Because a man like Hale needs a man like Crane to remind him, once in a while, that he is still a man. She walked off. Maya stood at the service station holding a fresh pitcher and thought about that for a long time. By the time she ended her shift at 3:47 p.m., Benedict Crane had paid his check, left a generous tip for Celeste, and gone. The folded newspaper was still on the table. Maya cleared it herself. Under it she found a small white card, blank except for a single line in a careful old-fashioned hand. Miss Bennett, should you need any assistance at any point Saturday evening, I will be at the event. B.C. She held the card for a moment in the dim light of the service hallway. Then she folded it and put it in the inside pocket of her coat, next to the folded bills from the 40th anniversary couple. She walked home in the cold. She didn't take the bus. She slept badly that night. She had expected to. She lay on her back and stared at the whale-shaped water stain, and every time she started to drift, her heart would catch on something and she would be wide awake again. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, she got up and ate a piece of dry toast at the counter under the little pendant lamp and drank a glass of water. She sat on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet in her pajamas and looked at the refrigerator. The refrigerator had 2 magnets on it. One was a pizza place that had gone out of business 2 years ago. The other was a magnet from a community clinic that said in fading letters, "You are not alone. Call if you need to talk." The number below it had been worn almost unreadable by 3 years of fingers brushing past it. Maya looked at that magnet for a long time. She thought about her mother, who had never made it to 42. Her mother, who had worked double shifts at the hospital laundry and had still, somehow, found time to braid Maya's hair in 2 neat rows before school, and who had died of a heart attack standing in line at the pharmacy one Tuesday in March when Maya was 19. Her mother, who had never, not once in Maya's life, been invited to anything. She thought about what her mother might say if she were sitting on the kitchen floor with her now. She thought her mother would probably say, "Girl, go to bed." She almost laughed. She went to bed. Saturday morning arrived in a pale square of light on the wall beside her bed. Maya opened her eyes at 7:14. She lay still for a moment, listening. The radiator had finally turned on at some point in the night, a low mechanical sigh, and the apartment was warmer than it had been in weeks. She got up, she showered. She stood for a long time under water that was almost too hot, and she let it run over the tops of her shoulders, and she did not think about anything in particular. She got out. She dried her hair slowly. She made herself eggs and toast, the way Aunt Louisa had told her to. She ate all of it. At 11:14, she was on a train to Bay Ridge, her coat buttoned to the throat, a canvas tote bag on her lap holding a pair of heels and tissue paper that Celeste had dropped off the night before. The heels were real leather, black, 3 inches, almost unworn. They fit. Celeste had made her try them on in her apartment Friday night with a pair of socks still on, and when Maya had stood up in them, Celeste had said quietly, "There, see?" Aunt Louisa opened the door at 12:04. She did not say hello. She looked Maya up and down, noted that she had eaten, nodded once, and said, "Come in, take off your clothes. We begin." The final fitting took 2 hours. Aunt Louisa had taken in the waist by a 1/4 inch the day before, and she had taken up the hem, and she had pressed the gown on her ironing board with a cloth between the iron and the fabric, because, she muttered, "you did not put heat directly on fabric this old." Maya stood on the small stool in the middle of the room while Aunt Louisa walked around her one more time with a mouthful of pins, kneeling, rising, tilting her head, pinching a seam between her fingers, letting it go. "Shoulders. Sorry." "You don't apologize to me. You apologize to your shoulders. They have been carrying you your whole life for nothing. They deserve better." Maya laughed. She could not help it. Aunt Louisa did not laugh. She pinched the fabric at Maya's hip one more time, released it, stepped back, and looked. She looked for a long time. Then she said, "Okay, mija, come down." Maya stepped off the stool. Aunt Louisa unzipped her. Maya changed back into her regular clothes. Aunt Louisa hung the gown on a wooden hanger on the back of the door and covered it, slowly, with a garment bag, and zipped the bag with a long, careful hiss of the zipper. Now we eat. Aunt Louisa, Now we eat. The ballroom is at 7. The car comes for you at 7, yes? Where do you live? Ellison and Fulton. So the car comes at 7. You must eat now. You will not eat at the ballroom. The food at the ballroom is small and pretty, and it is not food. I know. I dressed women for those ballrooms for 31 years. I will give you real food now. She fed Maya a bowl of rice with beans and a small plate of chicken that had been slow cooked in something red and patient, and a glass of cold water with a slice of lime in it. Maya ate all of it. She did not know she was hungry until she started. At 2:30, Celeste rang the buzzer. She had come out to drive Maya home with the dress. The three of them stood in the living room for a moment before Maya left. Aunt Louisa placed the garment bag in Celeste's hands as if she were handing over an infant. She looked at Maya. Mija. Yes, ma'am. Listen to me now. When you walk in tonight, you will want to look at the floor. You will not look at the floor. When you walk in tonight, you will want to walk quickly, to get to a wall where you can stand. You will not walk quickly. You will walk at the speed of a woman who has nowhere to be. Do you understand me? Yes, ma'am. When people stare, you do not look at them. You look just past them, like there is something pleasant on the other side of the room, and you have plenty of time to get to it. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. When a man tries to make you small, you do not answer fast. You do not answer hot. You answer slow. You let the room wait. Silence is not weakness, mija. Silence is a blade. Yes, ma'am. And when you are afraid, and you will be afraid, there is no shame in being afraid. You remember. You remember that every woman in that room is more afraid than you, and you remember that you have lost already the things they are afraid of losing. So what can they take from you tonight? Maya swallowed. Nothing. Nothing, mija. Say it again. Nothing. Good. Aunt Louisa reached up. She kissed Maya's cheek once. She smelled of thread and rosewater and coffee. Go, she said. Go be visible. Saw it. The drive back took a long time. Traffic on the bridge was bad. Celeste drove with the garment bag hanging carefully from a hook above the back door, the dress swaying slightly with the motion of the car, like something alive. They did not talk much. Somewhere along the way, Celeste reached across and squeezed Maya's hand once and let go. Maya squeezed back. At 4:11 p.m., they were inside Maya's apartment. Celeste hung the dress on the inside of the bathroom door so the steam from Maya's next shower would soften any last wrinkles. She laid out the shoes. She laid out the little gold studs Maya's mother had given her when she was 16, the ones Maya kept in a small blue box in the top drawer of her dresser. She laid out a pair of seamless underthings she'd brought from her own drawer and had quietly washed twice. She laid out a tube of lipstick. Maya stared at the lipstick. It was a color she had never owned before. What is that? Maya asked. That's called Leave Them Alone. What? It's just my lipstick. I named it. Celeste. What? I'm allowed to name things. Maya laughed for the first time all day. Celeste had her sit on the closed lid of the toilet, and she combed out Maya's hair, and she dried it properly with her good dryer, the one she'd brought over in her bag. She did not curl it. She did not style it elaborately. She smoothed it. She tucked one side gently behind Maya's ear, the way Aunt Louisa had said. She looked at Maya in the bathroom mirror. Simple, she said. You have a face, Maya. Let them see it. She did Maya's makeup in the same spirit. Nothing heavy. A little around the eyes. A little on the cheeks. The lipstick last. At 6:22 p.m., Celeste zipped Maya into the gown. She did not say anything for a long moment. Maya watched her in the mirror. She watched Celeste's eyes move across her shoulders, her waist, her hem. She watched Celeste's eyes go glassy for one quick second before Celeste blinked and turned away. Okay, Celeste said, her voice rougher than usual. Okay. Shoes. Maya stepped into the shoes. Celeste knelt and buckled the small ankle strap on each, the way a mother buckles a child's first formal shoes, and then she stood up and stepped back. Maya looked at herself in the full-length mirror on the back of the closet door. She didn't cry. She almost did. Her hair was smooth, her shoulders were back. The gown caught the late afternoon light from the bedroom window and turned the color it was supposed to be, the dusk color, the almost purple that was not any color you could name. Her mother's little gold studs were in her ears, her hands were at her sides. She did not look like a waitress. She also did not quite look like a woman who belonged in a ballroom on the 42nd floor of the Thornbury. What she looked like, Maya thought, studying herself in the mirror, was a woman the world had not quite decided about yet. And that she thought was fine. That was exactly fine. Celeste came up behind her. She squeezed her shoulders. She did not say anything. She did not need to. At 6:48 p.m., Celeste's phone buzzed. She checked it. Car's downstairs. Maya took one long breath. Celeste picked up her coat. I'm walking you down. You don't have to. I'm walking you down. They went. Maya held the skirt of the gown in her left hand on the stairs. On the second landing, under the dark bulb that had been out for 6 weeks, Celeste stopped her. Maya. Yeah. One word. Out. One word. I know. 12 minutes. I swear to God. I know, Celeste. Celeste nodded. She kept walking. On the sidewalk outside the walk-up, a black car was idling at the curb. It was not a stretch limousine. It was a long, low, quiet sedan with tinted windows and the kind of matte finish that announced nothing and suggested everything. A driver was standing beside the open back door, a man in his 50s with a gray overcoat and a gray cap, and the patient, attentive posture of a man who had done this for someone, somewhere, many times. He straightened when he saw them. Miss Bennett? Yes. Edmund, ma'am. I'll be your driver this evening, may I? He held out his hand for her coat. Maya realized she was still wearing it. She hesitated, then let him take it. Celeste took the coat from Edmund. I'll hold it, Celeste said. I'll bring it up. Very good, miss. Edmund gestured toward the open back door. Maya turned to Celeste. Celeste's eyes were wet. Celeste was pretending they weren't. Go, Celeste said. Maya hugged her. Hard. Celeste hugged her back. Maya stepped toward the car. Edmund helped her in, one hand steady at her elbow, the way a man helps a woman into a car in a movie from 1962. He closed the door gently after her. He walked around to the driver's side. He got in. May I confirm the address, ma'am? The Thornbury Hotel, 42nd floor, Vance Foundation Gala. Mr. Hale's guest. Yes. We'll have you there by 7:40. Would you prefer the radio on or off? Off, please. Very good, ma'am. The car pulled away from the curb. Maya turned once and looked back through the tinted rear window. Celeste stood on the sidewalk under the streetlight, Maya's coat folded over her arm, her other hand pressed to her mouth, watching the car go. She did not wave. Maya faced forward. She folded her hands in her lap. She counted, very slowly, her breathing. The Thornbury Hotel rose out of the financial district like a knife held upright. 44 stories of black glass and brushed steel, the top 2 of which were private residences that did not appear in any public directory. The 42nd floor was the grand ballroom, reserved that night by the Vance Foundation, a philanthropic organization whose stated purpose involved arts funding and children's literacy, and whose actual purpose that night involved putting 340 of the city's wealthiest people in one room so that they could be seen by each other being charitable. The car pulled up to the Thornbury at 7:43 p.m. The red carpet was already lined with photographers. Blacktown cars were double-parked along the block, disgorging women in gowns and men in black tie at a steady theatrical rate. A string quartet's music drifted faintly from somewhere inside the revolving doors. Flashbulbs crackled. Edmund slowed to a stop at the foot of the carpet. He did not open the door immediately. He turned in his seat. Ma'am, before I open the door. Yes? Mr. Crane said to tell you the elevator on the far right of the lobby goes directly to the ballroom. It is attended. The attendant will know your name. If you should wish to leave at any point at all, come back to that same elevator, give my name to the concierge in the lobby, and I will be at the front doors in 90 seconds. I will not leave the block, ma'am. Maya stared at him. Mr. Crane said that? Mr. Crane said that, ma'am. Thank you, Edmund. Yes, ma'am. He stepped out. He walked around to her door. He opened it. Maya took one breath. She stepped out of the car. The flashes started the second her foot touched the carpet. Not because the photographers knew who she was, because they photographed everyone. It was easier to shoot every arrival than to miss one, and they would sort out who had been worth shooting back at the editor's desk. The flashes hit her in a bright, uneven wave, and for 1/2 second her body wanted to flinch. It did not flinch. Aunt Louisa had said, "When people stare, you do not look at them. You look just past them." Maya looked just past them, at the revolving doors, at the warm gold light inside the lobby. She began to walk. She walked slowly. She walked at the speed of a woman who had nowhere in particular to be, and who had all evening to get there. Edmund walked 2 steps behind her, not too close, close enough. The flashes continued. She heard a photographer, a man, say to another photographer, a woman, "Who's that?" She heard the woman say, "No idea, shoot it anyway." Inside the lobby, the temperature changed. Warm air, low music, the smell of money that is very old and has been recently dry cleaned. A concierge in a dove-gray suit inclined his head to her. "Miss Bennett?" "Yes." "The far-right elevator. Mr. Halim will escort you up." Mr. Halim was a small, neat man with a badge on his lapel. He bowed very slightly to her, waited for her to step inside the elevator, stepped in after her, and pressed the button for 42. The doors closed. The elevator was mirrored on 3 sides. Maya had to stand in it for 41 floors. Mr. Halim, to his credit, kept his eyes pointed politely at the floor indicator. Maya did not look at herself in the mirrors. She looked at the floor indicator too. 16. 17. 18. She could feel her own pulse at the base of her throat. She could feel the weight of the skirt against her legs. She could feel very clearly the cool, small weight of her mother's gold studs in her ears. She thought about those studs. She thought about her mother braiding her hair before school. She thought about Aunt Louisa saying, "Yes, those." 28. She stood up a little straighter. 36. She took 1 slow breath. 41. 42. The doors opened. The sound hit her first. A warm, enormous wall of it. 300 people talking at once, glasses touching glasses, a string quartet playing something light and Viennese, a low laugh cresting somewhere near the bar. Then the smell, perfume and champagne, and the faint polish of expensive wood floors. Then the light. The ballroom at the Thornbury was famous for its chandeliers. 3 of them, each the size of a small car, hung in a straight line down the center of the room. The ceiling was coffered in gold leaf. The floor was white oak polished to a soft shine. Round tables dressed in deep cream linen dotted the far end of the room. In the near half, people stood in clusters with flutes of champagne, 100 small conversations overlapping. And at the top of a short, wide marble staircase that descended into the room, a steward in white tails stood with a small lectern and a seating card. The steward looked up as the elevator doors opened. He did not at first recognize the name on the guest list he was about to be asked for. He had been on the 42nd floor for 9 years. He had greeted senators, oil families, the mayor. He had not tonight been expecting a young woman he did not know. Maya stepped out of the elevator. Mr. Halim stayed inside. The doors closed behind her. She walked at the pace of a woman with nowhere to be to the lectern. "Good evening, madam." "Good evening. May I have your name, please?" "Maya Bennett. I am the guest of Mr. Hale." The steward did not react in any way that a less careful observer would have called a reaction. But Maya, who had learned to read faces over 300 tables at the Meridian, saw his pupils adjust. Just slightly. He had not been told, apparently, that Dominic Hale had brought a guest this year. He looked down at the list. He found the name. It had been added late, penciled in. He recovered fast. "Of course, Miss Bennett. Mr. Hale is at table 7, on the far right as you look out over the room. Please allow me the honor of announcing your arrival." "That won't be necessary." "Madam, it is tradition for guests of—" "Thank you, but it won't be necessary." She said it quietly. She said it the way Aunt Louisa had taught her to say things. She did not smile. She did not frown. She just said it and let the silence after it do the work. The steward, after a brief half-second, inclined his head. "As you wish, Miss Bennett." "Thank you." She turned. She faced the room. She began to walk down the marble staircase. The thing that happened next did not happen all at once. It happened in a kind of rolling wave across the room, the way a stadium crowd becomes aware of something strange at one end of the field and turns slowly, section by section. A woman near the bottom of the staircase, in a green dress, glanced up. Her conversation paused. Her companion turned to see what she was looking at. He paused too. A man at the nearest cluster of people saw them pause, followed their eyes, and let his own drift toward the staircase. The man he had been talking to, after a beat, followed suit. It did not happen because Maya was the most beautiful woman in the room. She was not. There were women in that ballroom who were beautiful in a way that required $40,000 a year in maintenance and a very good surgeon and the kind of diet that required constant small unhappinesses. She was not one of them. It happened because Maya was walking into that ballroom the way a person walks into an empty church on a Tuesday afternoon. Unhurried, unannounced, looking at nothing in particular, not performing. And in a room full of performance, in a room in which every single person had spent 2 hours that afternoon performing their way to this evening, the absence of performance was a thing the eye could not help but follow. She reached the bottom of the staircase. She did not stop. She moved toward the far right side of the room. Not fast, not slow. The skirt of the gown made a soft, unhurried sound with each step. A waiter offered her champagne. She declined politely with a small shake of her head. A woman stepped out of her path without realizing she was doing it. Conversations around her were not stopping exactly. They were thinning, dipping. A man in a cluster of 4 stopped mid-sentence, glanced, and did not resume his sentence for perhaps 3 full seconds. Halfway across the room she saw him. Dominic Hale was standing near the east windows with Victor Marzano, Silas Cade, and 2 other men she did not recognize. Tony Russo was a few feet behind them, a drink in each hand, laughing at something. Benedict Crane was at a smaller table off to the side, alone, a glass of ice water in front of him, his hands folded. It was Benedict Crane who saw her first. The old man did not react large. He did not smile. He did not raise a hand. He simply saw her, let his eyes rest on her for a long, steady moment, and exhaled once through his nose the way an old man exhales when something he has quietly been dreading has turned out, against the odds, to be bearable. Then, with the tip of one finger, slowly, he reached up and touched his own lapel. Twice. A signal. Maya did not know it was a signal until Dominic Hale, across the ballroom, responded to it. His head turned toward Crane. Crane's eyes flicked toward the room. Dominic's eyes followed. And then Dominic Hale saw her. He had been in the middle of saying something to Victor Marzano. His mouth stopped forming the next word. He did not close it. He did not reopen it. He just stood there, with whatever he had been about to say still caught somewhere behind his teeth, and watched her walk. He had expected all day that she would not come. He had expected at his most generous that if she came, she would come wrong, in something borrowed that didn't fit, in something shiny that tried too hard, in some version of herself that had been painted over the waitress instead of replacing her. He had expected to feel guilty. He had expected to have to quietly steer her away from the worst of his men, to protect her from the lesson he had invited her into. He had not expected this. He had not expected a young woman in a dress the color of dusk, her hair tucked behind one ear, walking across a ballroom in the middle of 300 people like the room was not the event, like she was. He did not move for several long seconds. That in itself was unusual. Dominic Hale, in his adult life, had rarely failed to move for several long seconds. Victor Marzano, beside him, noticed first. He followed Dominic's line of sight across the room. He saw Maya. His jaw did something complicated. He set his drink down on a tray. "Tony," Victor said, not turning his head. "Yeah? Get over here." "What's... Get over here." Tony Russo stepped forward, laughing. "What did I... Oh." His laugh died. "Oh." He stood there with a drink in each hand and watched Maya Bennett cross a ballroom on the 42nd floor of the Thornbury Hotel. His smile came back after a second. Too quickly. Too hard. "Well," he said. "Well, look at that." "Tony?" Victor said quietly. "Not a word. Not one word tonight. Do you hear me?" "Vic, I'm just saying, oh, I said not one word." Maya arrived at table 7. She did not look at Tony. She did not look at Silas. She did not look at the 2 men she did not know. She looked at one person, and only at one person, and she waited. Dominic Hale stepped forward. He moved, finally. He crossed the 3 feet between them, and he stopped in front of her, and the ballroom around them was, for one long and extraordinary moment, the quietest place in the city. He was taller than she remembered standing this close to him. She had served him sitting down for 19 months. She had never stood eye to eye with him. She stood eye to eye with him now. He did not know what to say. For one of the very few times in his adult life, Dominic Hale did not know what to say. He had planned vaguely some version of charming opening, some small remark that would acknowledge the moment, something small and controlled that would let the evening proceed in the channels he had cut for it. He abandoned it. He said, very quietly, so that only she could hear, "Miss Bennet." "Mr. Hale." "You came." "I said I would." A small silence. "Yes," he said, "you did." She looked at him steadily. She did not smile. She did not frown. She let the silence stretch between them for one extra beat, the way Aunt Louisa had taught her to let silences stretch, and she watched, in real time, something happen in the slate color of his eyes that he had probably never let happen before in public. Then she said, in a voice so level and so quiet that the men standing behind him could not hear it, "Shall we?" And Dominic Hale, in the middle of a ballroom full of 300 of the wealthiest people in the city, offered his arm to a 22-year-old waitress from the east side like a man who had just realized, 40 seconds too late, that the room he had thought he was walking her into was actually the room she had been walking him into all along. She took his arm. Her hand did not shake. The quartet started a new piece. A low ripple of conversation resumed. Tony Russo threw back the rest of his drink in one swallow. And across the room, alone at his small table, Benedict Crane lifted his glass of ice water 2 inches off the tablecloth, toward no one in particular, and set it back down. He walked her to the table. He did it the way a man walks a woman to a table when he has walked many women to many tables in his life, and none of them have ever felt like this. One hand low at the small of her back, not touching the fabric, just hovering near it, the way a man's hand hovers when he is not sure whether he has been granted the permission to rest it. He pulled out a chair for her at table 7. She sat. He sat beside her. The 4 men at the table, Victor on Dominic's other side, Silas Cade across, a man with silver hair who had been introduced to no one, and Tony Russo, who had taken the farthest chair of his own volition, all rose when she sat, and all sat back down in a kind of uneven cascade that would have been comic if anyone in the room had been in the mood to find anything funny. "Gentlemen," Dominic said evenly, "you remember Miss Bennet." "Good evening," Victor said. His voice was quiet, steady. He looked her in the eye. "We haven't been properly introduced, miss. Victor Marzano." "Maya Bennet." She inclined her head. "Good evening, Mr. Marzano." "Just Victor, if you don't mind." "Victor, then?" Silas Cade across the table regarded her with the glassy, polite interest of a man watching a rare bird land on a feeder. "Miss Bennet." "Mr. Cade." The silver-haired man introduced himself as Reynold Vance. He was, Maya understood instantly, a Vance of the Vance Foundation, a man whose family name was on the event, and who had until 30 seconds ago been under the impression that he was the second most important person at his own table. He shook her hand with both of his. His palms were warm and dry. "Miss Bennet, what a pleasure, what a genuine pleasure. Forgive my asking, but I don't believe I've had the opportunity to meet you at any of the Foundation's previous. This is my first time, Mr. Vance." "Your first time. How marvelous. And what brings you to the Foundation's work this year?" Maya considered him for one small beat. Then she said, in a voice of perfect, unhurried calm, "Mr. Hale invited me." Reynold Vance blinked. The pleasantry he had been building died halfway out of his mouth. He was not, Maya could see, a stupid man. He had been in rooms long enough to hear what had just happened. Dominic Hale did not bring guests to the Vance Gala. Dominic Hale had not, in 6 years of attending, brought a single guest to the Vance Gala. The silver-haired man recovered fast. He had decades of practice. He smiled wider. Well, what an inspired choice of companion, Dominic. Miss Bennet, I hope you enjoy the evening. The salmon is particularly good this year, I'm told." "Thank you." He took his seat. He picked up his water. He drank from it and set it down too precisely. Tony Russo, at the far end, cleared his throat. "Maya." He said her name the way a man says a word he has been waiting all night to say. "Long way from—" "Tony," Victor said, I'm just making conversation, Vic. Relax. Tony, I said relax. Miss Bennett, I apologize for my colleague. He has a tendency to warm up before his brain does. Maya did not look at Tony. She did not give him the small relief of a look. She looked at Victor. Don't apologize for him, Victor. He's grown. A very small silence. Silas Cade across the table made a sound that was not quite a laugh, more like a breath leaving him, pleasantly surprised. Reynold Vance studied the tablecloth with a new interest. Tony's jaw worked once. He did not speak. Dominic, beside her, said nothing at all. He was watching her profile, not staring. Watching in the way he watched contracts across his desk, with a kind of quiet, intent attention that was not about her body. It was about her mouth. About what her mouth had just said. About the fact that it had said it slowly. The steward appeared with menus. The quartet shifted to something by Brahms. The evening, Maya understood, had formally begun. For the first 30 minutes, she said very little. She had decided in Celeste's bathroom that she would say very little. She let the other people at the table work. Reynold Vance told a story about a trip to the Amalfi Coast. Silas Cade offered a mild remark about the wine. Victor Marzano asked her a single quiet question whether she had come far that evening, and Maya, to her own surprise, answered him honestly. The east side, Victor. Long drive with the bridge traffic. Yes. Did Edmund bring you? She looked at him. Something in his tone was not rude, it was curious. Victor, she realized, was a man who paid attention to who drove whom, who accompanied whom, who was watching whom in a room. Yes, Edmund. Good. Edmund's a good man, been with us a long time. He was very kind. He will be. He'll be outside all night, miss. You tell him one word, he'll pull the car around. Victor said it simply, the way a man tells you the weather. Maya understood then that Benedict Crane had not been the only one to make a plan for her this evening. She understood, with a small, strange pressure behind her sternum, that at least two men at this table, the old lawyer alone at his side table, and the older man with the scar at Dominic's right hand, had made sure privately that she had an exit. She did not know what to do with that information. She nodded once. Thank you, Victor. Don't mention it, miss. Dominic, quiet beside her, lifted his water glass an inch and set it down. He did not say anything, but Maya felt the small, settling attention of him. He had heard that exchange. He had understood, as she had, what it meant. Something in the air between him and Victor shifted half an inch and did not shift back. The first course came out at 8:22, a small plate of something delicate with citrus on it, and Tony Russo, who had been quiet for 24 minutes, could no longer bear being quiet. He leaned forward on his forearms. He smiled at her with every tooth he had. So, Maya, what do you do? The table went still. Victor set his fork down. Reynold Vance's eyes dropped to his plate. Silas Cade lifted his wine. Dominic did not move. Maya cut a small piece of whatever was on her plate. She put it in her mouth. She chewed. She set her fork down. She wiped the corner of her lip with the linen napkin. She looked at Tony. Then she looked past him. Then she looked at him again. She let him sit in that beat for a breath longer than was comfortable, the way Aunt Louisa had said to let silences stretch. And then she said clearly, at normal conversational volume, I serve food, Tony. Tony's smile did not quite hold. You serve food? Yes. That's interesting. Where? The Meridian. He laughed. It was the laugh of a man desperately trying to put a room back where he thought it had been. The Meridian. Ha! Okay. Wait. That's where... Dom, that's... Yes, Dominic said quietly. That's where. You hear that, Vic? I heard her, Tony. That's funny. That's actually funny. That's... Tony, Maya said. He stopped. She had said his name the way a school teacher says the name of a child who has been speaking during a test. Quietly. Once. Without heat. And Tony Russo, 32 years old, worth more money than any small country, stopped talking. You asked what I do, Maya said. I told you. I've served your table for 19 months. For 19 months I have brought you Rabbi. I have brought you your drinks. I have cleared your plates. You have never asked me my name until Tuesday. You asked Tuesday because you were bored. Tonight you are asking again because you are uncomfortable, which is fine. Discomfort is a useful feeling. You might sit inside it. She picked up her fork. She cut another small piece of her course. She put it in her mouth. Tony Russo stared at her. Silas Cade very slowly took a sip of his wine with the expression of a man who has been handed, unexpectedly, the best dessert of his life. Victor, beside Dominic, did not move. Reynold Vance coughed very quietly into his fist. Dominic, after a long moment, reached for his water glass. He lifted it. He took one steady swallow. He set it down. "Tony," he said, not loudly. "Yeah? Go get some air." Tony stared at him. "Dom, go get some air, Tony. Come back when you've had some." There was a beat when it was not clear what Tony Russo was going to do. His face went through 3 different colors. His hand tightened around his wine glass in a way that would have broken a less expensive glass. But Tony Russo, for all of his noise, was not, in the end, a man who disobeyed Dominic Hale in public. He stood up. He pushed his chair back. He nodded once, tightly, to Reynold Vance, who was the only man at the table he still owed a pretense of manners to, and he walked away from table 7 with the stiff, ungiving gait of a man who had just had a piece of his own scaffolding kicked out from under him in full view of a ballroom. The table was quiet for a moment. Then Silas Cade said, in his low rasp, to no one in particular, "I thought the salmon would be the best part of the evening." Victor Marzano, for the first time that Maya had ever seen, actually laughed. It was a short, rusty laugh, the laugh of a man who did not laugh often, and who was surprised at himself for laughing now. Reynold Vance smiled despite himself. Even Dominic, beside her, let out a quiet breath that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sigh. Maya did not smile. She ate another small bite of her course. Something had shifted. Something in the air over the table, in the shape of the evening. People around the ballroom had not heard what had been said at table 7. They were too far. But they had seen Tony Russo stand up, seen the color of his face, seen him walk stiffly toward the coat check area. In a room like this, a small visible crack was news. Heads turned. Whispers bloomed at 3, then 5, then 9 surrounding tables. "Did you see? Who is she? I don't recognize her. She's with Hale." "With Hale? Since when does Hale bring—" Maya kept eating. She did not look at any of the heads. She did not acknowledge any of the whispering. Halfway through the second course, the salmon Reynold Vance had recommended, a woman in her 50s in an emerald gown crossed the floor and stopped at table 7. She was the kind of woman whose hair had been set by someone very expensive that morning. Her diamonds were real. Her smile was mechanical in a way that had required practice. "Dominic, darling." "Patricia, forgive the interruption. I had to introduce myself to your stunning companion." "Of course. Patricia Holloway, this is Miss Maya Bennett. Miss Bennett. Mrs. Holloway sits on the Foundation's board." "A pleasure, Mrs. Holloway." The woman's eyes were doing the slow appraisal Maya had expected. They moved across her collarbone, across the gown, across her earrings. They caught on the earrings. They stayed there for a fraction of a second longer than was polite. "Those earrings, vintage, aren't they?" "They were my mother's." "Oh, how lovely." A brief surgical pause. "And your gown, Miss Bennett?" "I can't place it." "Is that— I don't know the name of the house. It was given to me by a friend." "A friend?" "Yes." Patricia Holloway's smile held. It had been trained to hold, but something behind her eyes had just been informed of something she did not yet know how to catalog. "Well, it's a magnificent gown, truly. I would have sworn it was a couture piece from about the mid-2000s. My friend was a tailor at the opera." "Oh! Oh, how interesting. A friend of yours was a tailor at the opera." "Yes." The woman stood there a second longer. Then, very carefully, she inclined her head. "A true pleasure, Miss Bennett. Dominic, Victor, Silas, Reynold, please enjoy your evening." She drifted away. Silas Cade set down his wine. He looked at Maya with what could almost have been respect. "Miss Bennett?" "Yes, Mr. Cade." "That woman just asked you who dressed you." "Yes." "You told her your friend was a tailor at the opera." "Yes." That gown is from the 2008 collection of a house in Milan that does not sell to the public. I have seen one other like it in my life. On a contralto. At the Vienna Opera in 2009. Miss Bennet, your friend appears to be a very talented tailor. Maya looked at him levelly. She is, she said. Silas Cade inclined his head a quarter inch. He went back to his wine. Beside her, Dominic spoke for the first time in 15 minutes, quietly. Only to her. Maya. It was the first time he had used her first name alone. Not Miss Bennet, not Maya, that will be all. Just her name. Yes. You're not what I expected. I'm aware. Are you angry with me? She considered the question. She considered it honestly. She looked down at her plate, at the half-eaten salmon, at the small sprig of dill. She considered the question for a count of 3. Then she turned her head just enough to look at him. Not with you, Mr. Hale. Not exactly. That is generous of you, considering. Considering what? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, quietly, evenly, considering that I invited you tonight for the wrong reasons. She did not react. She did not look surprised. She did not, however, look away from him either. I know, she said. He had been expecting many possible responses. He had not been expecting that one. He did not reply. I heard you, Mr. Hale. Tuesday, through the door. The color under his skin did not change. A man like Dominic Hale did not betray interior weather in public. But his eyes changed. Something tightened and then loosened inside them, the way water in a glass gets briefly cloudy when a drop of something bitter is added. How much? All of it. He exhaled slowly through his nose. Christ. Yes. The bet. The bet. Maya, You don't need to say it, Mr. Hale. I do, actually. I do need to say it. I owe you a proper apology. She looked at him. She let a small beat of silence pass. No, Mr. Hale, you don't. I don't? You don't. Because I didn't come tonight to collect an apology from you. I didn't come tonight because you invited me. I came tonight, she said, in a voice so level that it would later seem to him, replaying it, like the most dangerous thing he had ever heard said at a dinner table. Because 5 men in a back room decided what I was. And I realized I had been letting men like that decide what I was for 22 years. And I was done. She turned back to her salmon. She cut a small piece. She ate it. Dominic Hale did not move for a long moment. He sat in his chair in a room of 300 people, and he looked at the side of her face the way a man looks at the horizon the first time he has realized, with his whole body, that he has sailed the wrong way. Maya. Yes. May I tell you something? Yes. He spoke quietly. His voice did not carry past the two of them. I have been in a lot of rooms in my life. I have watched a lot of people walk into a lot of rooms. Most of them walk in trying to be seen. A handful walk in trying not to be seen. Until tonight, I would have told you those were the only 2 kinds. She did not respond. You did something I have not seen anyone do before, he said. You walked in without asking the room for a verdict. Maya, despite everything, felt something under her sternum move. She did not look at him. She kept her eyes on her plate. That's not a thing I did, Mr. Hale. That's a thing 2 women I know taught me how to do. This afternoon, for the first time in my life. Then they are remarkable women. Yes, they are. She set her fork down. She dabbed her lips with her napkin. She looked up across the ballroom, past the quartet, past the tables, past the chandeliers. Somewhere across the room she could see Benedict Crane at his small side table, still alone, still with his water glass, watching the room the way a very old cat watches a room from a high shelf. He met her eyes. He inclined his head a quarter inch. Mr. Crane watches you, she said to Dominic. Mr. Crane has watched me since I was 21 years old, Maya. He was my father's lawyer. He is, in some measurable sense, the closest thing to a father I have had in 16 years. She looked at him. Does he approve of what you do? Dominic was quiet for a long moment. No, he said finally. He does not. Why does he stay? Because he believes, I suspect, that I still might be reachable. Is he right? He did not answer her immediately. She did not repeat the question. She did not press it. She let the silence sit, the way Aunt Louisa had taught her. I don't know, Miss Bennet, he said at last. I did not know the answer to that question 10 minutes ago. I have had to revise it twice during this course. At 9:47 p.m., after the third course, Tony Russo came back. He came back with his deliberate walk of a man who had spent 40 minutes in the lobby bar reminding himself of who he was and who he was not going to let a waitress from Greer take from him. His color had returned. His smile had returned. He walked to the table and pulled out his chair, and he sat down, and he leaned back and he said, loudly enough for the surrounding tables to hear, "So, Maya, my apologies for before. Vic here tells me I was out of line. Let me start over. How are you enjoying your evening?" It was a trap. It was an obvious trap. He wanted her to answer him in front of the surrounding tables. He wanted the room to see her being polite, being small, being grateful to have been forgiven by him for having embarrassed him. Victor Marzano set down his knife very deliberately. Dominic's face had gone flat. Not angry. Flat. Which was, Maya was beginning to understand, more dangerous than angry. Maya set down her fork. She turned in her chair. She faced Tony Russo fully. She looked at him with the same unhurried, soft eyes she had looked at him with before, but something in them now was, for the first time that evening, cold. Not sharp. Cold. The way a pond in February is cold. She said, pitched to carry exactly as far as his voice had, "I'm enjoying my evening very much, Tony. Thank you for asking. I notice you have chosen to apologize to me publicly instead of privately. That is interesting. Private apologies are for people who are actually sorry. Public apologies are for people who would like to be seen being sorry. I accept neither tonight." The surrounding tables had gone very still. "Tony?" she said, and his first name in her mouth was not an endearment, it was a correction. "You bet $10,000 that I would not come tonight. You bet it with men who have known you a long time. You bet it because it was easier to make a bet about me than to look at why a stranger's presence in this room unsettled you. It is fine that you were unsettled. Most people would be, but you should know, before tonight is over, that I did not come tonight to win your bet. I came tonight because I had been quiet for a long time, and I was tired of being quiet. That is not about you. Very little about tonight, in fact, is about you. I thought you should know that before we continue the evening together." She picked up her water. She took one slow sip. She set it down. She turned back to her plate. The silence that followed was so complete that the string quartet's note, 3 bars into a small chamber piece, seemed almost loud. Somebody, at a neighboring table, actually coughed. Tony Russo's face had gone a color that the human face is not really designed to go. Red and white at the same time, a kind of bloodless flush. His mouth opened. It closed. He looked at Victor. He looked at Dominic. He looked at Reynold Vance, who was carefully studying a button on his own cuff. He looked at Silas Cade, who was unbelievably smiling. A thin, slow, genuine smile. "Dom," Tony said finally. "Yeah." "You... Sit down, Tony. Finish your course. Do not speak to Miss Bennett again this evening. Am I being clear?" It was not a question. Tony sat. He did not speak. Dominic Hale turned back to Maya. He did not say anything for a long beat. He was, if she was reading him correctly, experiencing something that he did not have a clean internal filing system for. A man who had ordered men's lives for a living for 15 years, sitting next to a waitress who had just dismantled one of his lieutenants in a ballroom full of people, without raising her voice, without looking flustered, without even appearing to have tried. "Maya," he said very quietly. "Yes." "Are you all right?" The question surprised her. She had not expected it. She turned her head slightly to look at him. She considered the question. She told him the truth. "My hands are shaking under the table, Mr. Hale." "I can't see it." "Nobody can, but they are." "That's all right." "I know it is." "May I—" He paused. She watched him choose a word and then unchoose it. "May I offer you something to drink?" "I don't drink." "Water, then." "I have water. A different water, a colder one. I'll go get it." She almost laughed. He was, she realized with a small internal shock, actually offering to stand up and walk across a ballroom full of 300 of the wealthiest people in the city to bring a cold glass of water to a woman whose shaking hands nobody else could see. She looked at him. She looked at him for a small, real moment, the way she had not yet allowed herself to look at him all evening, and for the first time she saw, past the cut of the suit and the set of the jaw and the reputation he wore around him like a coat, that Dominic Hale was also, underneath all of that, a man of 34 years old who did not quite know what he was supposed to do at this table tonight. "You can sit, Mr. Hale." "All right." "Just sit." "All right." He sat. He picked up his wine. He did not drink. He set it down. Victor Marzano, on Dominic's other side, was looking at his boss with an expression that Maya could not fully read. It was not alarm. It was not amusement. It was something closer to a quiet, careful watching, the way an old soldier watches the light change on a horizon. He has watched change many times before. Across the table, Silas Cade broke what remained of the tension by lifting his wine glass and saying mildly, "To new acquaintances." Reynold Vance, who was looking tonight like a man who had not earned this evening and was becoming delighted that he was there for it anyway, lifted his glass with a quick and genuine nod. "To new acquaintances." Victor lifted his. Tony Russo, after a long second, reached for his glass and lifted it too, because he did not know what else to do. Dominic lifted his. Maya did not lift anything. She inclined her head a quarter inch to Silas Cade. That was all. The glasses came back down. Somewhere around the fifth course, a small rectangle of lamb with something green on it, a man she did not recognize approached the table. He was in his 70s, white-haired, slightly stooped, with a dark blue suit and a boutonniere that was very fresh. He stopped at her elbow. "Miss Bennett." She looked up. "Yes?" "Forgive the interruption. My name is Harold Lindley. I am the chairman of the Foundation's Arts Committee. I wanted to tell you something very briefly before the dancing begins." "Yes?" "My wife and I have attended this gala every year for 21 years. We've sat at that table over there, that one, the one in the corner, every year. We've watched a great many beautiful young women be introduced by a great many important men at this event, and I just wanted to say, Miss Bennett, that I have not seen one walk into that room the way you walked into it tonight, and I wanted to say so." She felt her face, for the first time all evening, want to do something it had not wanted to do yet. She kept it from doing it. "Thank you, Mr. Lindley. That is very kind of you to say." "Not kind. True. My wife said she wished her granddaughter could have seen it. Our granddaughter is 19. She is at a college 300 miles from here, and she has not, I don't think, been happy there for a while. Sometimes a young woman needs to see another young woman do a thing so she can know it's possible." Maya did not trust her voice immediately. She reached up and very briefly touched the little gold stud in her left ear. A small grounding touch. Her mother had once said, of these earrings, "These are for days when you need something to hold on to." "Mr. Lindley, please tell your granddaughter I said hello." "I will." "Please tell her it's possible." "I will, Miss Bennett, I will." He inclined his head. He walked away. He rejoined his wife at a table across the room, and Maya, watching him go, saw the wife, a small, white-haired woman with tired, kind eyes, lift her hand and wave once, quickly, at Maya from across the ballroom. A small, private wave. The wave of one stranger to another. Maya inclined her head back. Then she turned back to her plate. The lamb had gone a little cold. She ate it anyway. Dominic Hale beside her said quietly, for only her, "Miss Bennett." "Yes." "I believe that was the chairman of half of the Foundation's endowment telling you, in front of 300 witnesses, that you are the most remarkable thing to have walked into this room in 21 years. I heard him. I don't think you understand what that means inside this particular room." "I don't." "It means," he said, "that tomorrow morning, in very specific circles, people will be asking a great many questions about who Maya Bennett is." She cut another bite of lamb. "Let them ask, Mr. Hale." He looked at her for a long moment. "Yes," he said finally. "I suppose you're right." He turned to his own plate. He did not eat. He sat there next to her for a long moment, while the quartet began to shift into the first notes of something slower, the signal any regular attendee would have known, that the formal dinner was ending and that the dancing was about to begin. The lights in the ballroom dimmed, not a great deal, just enough. The warm gold deepened. The chandeliers dropped half a level of brightness. People began to stand up. Couples. Small pairs. Dominic turned back to her. He rose. He extended his hand. Miss Bennett, may I ask you to dance? She looked up at him. She looked at the hand he was offering. She looked at the ballroom behind him, at the 300 faces that had, over the course of the last 90 minutes, been quietly turning toward table 7 every time they thought no one was watching. She thought about Celeste, sitting on her couch in her apartment above the dry cleaners on Fulton, probably holding her phone, refreshing nothing, waiting. She thought about Aunt Louisa in Bay Ridge, probably doing the dishes. She thought about Benedict Crane at his side table, finishing his second glass of ice water. She thought, for one small, clear second, about her mother. Her mother had never been asked to dance at a ballroom in her life. Maya Bennett stood up. She placed her hand in his. Yes, Mr. Hale. She walked with him to the dance floor. The room, as they crossed it, did the thing it had done when she had come down the stairs. Conversations thinned, heads turned. A couple stepped aside to give them room. The quartet, as if on some private cue, began the slow, measured opening bars of a piece Maya did not recognize, a piece so soft that the brush of her gown against the floor made its own music under the notes. She placed her hand on his shoulder. He placed his at the small of her back, properly this time, light but definite. He was careful with her. Not delicate. Careful. The way a man is careful with a thing he has realized is not, in fact, more fragile than he is. They moved. The room kept watching. She did not look at any of them. She did not need to. She looked up at him. He looked down at her. And somewhere in the third measure of the piece, Dominic Hale said, very low, only to her, I'm going to say something now, Miss Bennett, that I have not said in public in my adult life. All right. I was wrong. She studied him. About what, Mr. Hale? About almost everything. She did not reply. He did not elaborate. They danced. Around them, the ballroom turned like a slow clock, the lights warm, the music steady, and at a small side table, Benedict Crane closed his eyes for one long moment and opened them again, and lifted his glass of ice water an inch and let it settle back down onto the linen. They danced through the rest of the piece. Neither of them spoke again. She was aware, in a small distant way, of the music ending, of the quartet pausing, of a smattering of applause that she did not turn her head to acknowledge. He stepped back from her. He kept her hand for 1/2 second longer than the form required, and then he released it. Miss Bennett? Mr. Hale. Would you do me one small courtesy? If I can. Would you come with me for 2 minutes, just to the corner? I need to do something, and I would like you to be standing where I can see you when I do it. She looked at him for a moment, then she inclined her head once. All right. He did not offer his arm this time. He just turned and walked, and she walked beside him. Not behind. Beside. The ballroom parted for them the way ballrooms part for couples that a room has decided, for its own reasons, to notice. They did not go to the corner she had expected. They went to the low, gently raised platform near the string quartet, where a small standing microphone had been set up earlier for the evening's announcements. The MC, a woman in a black pantsuit with a clipboard, was at the edge of the platform, waiting for the next transition in the program. Dominic raised one hand to her. Karen, Mr. Hale. A minute of your microphone, please. Of course, sir. He stepped up onto the platform. Maya remained at its edge, at his left hand, the gown settling around her ankles. The low buzz of the room began to notice the movement. A few heads turned, then more, then most. It was a room that was trained by long habit to watch what Dominic Hale did with his hands. He tapped the microphone once with his forefinger. The small thump carried. The room, by degrees, went quiet. He did not smile. He did not warm up. He did not thank anyone for being there. Ladies and gentlemen, he said. His voice was even and unhurried. My name is Dominic Hale. Most of you know me. A portion of you do business with me. A smaller portion, I think, actually like me. That distribution is fair. A thin, uncertain laugh moved through the room. I will not take long. I have 2 things to say, and then you will have the room back. The quiet deepened. The first is this. Earlier this week, at a dinner, a man at my table made a wager. The wager was about the young woman standing beside me now. The wager was cruel. The substance of it was that she was too small to walk into a room like this one, and that if she tried, she would fail in a way that would amuse the men at the table. I am not, tonight, going to name the man who made the wager. He knows who he is. Several of you may guess. Your guesses are probably correct. But I will say this. I accepted that wager. I did not need to. I had a number of reasons in my head at the time. None of them were good. They are not better tonight. I accepted the wager because it was easier to be amused by the idea than to be honest about what was being said and about my part in allowing it to be said at my table. A small shift in the room. People set down their drinks. I'm telling you this not because I have been made to, and not because I am hoping you will think better of me for saying it. You will not, and you should not. I am telling you this because Miss Maya Bennett, who is standing beside me, heard that conversation. She heard every word of it, and she came tonight anyway. He paused. The ballroom was entirely still. Somewhere in the silence, a fork made a small, clear sound against a plate and stopped. She did not come tonight because I invited her. She came tonight because she had decided, sometime between Tuesday and now, that she was done being the quietest thing in every room. She walked into this ballroom 2 hours ago on her own 2 feet, and some of you saw it, and you will remember it, and your children will hear about it. I'm telling you this because I want the record, tonight, in this room, to be corrected. She is not my experiment. She is not my guest in the sense that you might mean it. She is not my anything. She is a young woman who crossed 41 floors to stand in a room that was waiting to laugh at her, and who did not give the room the satisfaction. That is all. He stepped back from the microphone. Then, to the surprise of no one who had been watching carefully, and to the shock of everyone who had not, Dominic Hale turned to Maya Bennett at the edge of the platform, and in front of 340 of the wealthiest people in the city, inclined his head to her in a small, precise, unmistakable bow. Not deep, not theatrical. A half-inch nod of the head, the kind of bow a man gives to his equal when he has, belatedly, understood her to be so. The ballroom did not react immediately. It did not know what to do. It had no template for what had just happened. Then, slowly, from a table near the back, an old man stood up. Maya recognized him. It was Harold Linley, the chairman of the Arts Committee, the man whose granddaughter was 300 miles away and not happy there. He stood, and he put his 2 soft, wrinkled hands together, and he began to clap. Slowly. Once. Twice. 3 times. His wife stood beside him. She began to clap. Then Benedict Crane, at his small side table, set down his glass of ice water and rose, slowly, the way a very old man rises, and he began to clap as well. And then the ballroom, by degrees, by 2s and 3s, and then by whole tables, began to stand. Not for Dominic. The applause was not for Dominic. The applause, everyone in that room understood by the end of it, was for the young woman at the edge of the platform in the dust-colored gown, who had not asked for it, who had not expected it, and who, as the sound rose around her, did not smile, did not weep, did not bow. She simply stood there, her shoulders back the way Aunt Louisa had pressed them, and let the room acknowledge her. It was, she would realize much later, the first time in her 22 years that a room had applauded her for existing. She did not cry. Her face stayed very still. She let her eyes go soft and out of focus the way a person's eyes go when they are not looking at anything because they are looking, instead, at something inside themselves that they do not yet have the words for. The applause went on a long time. When it ended, Dominic turned to her again and said, low, only to her, "Miss Bennett, if you would like to leave now, I will walk you to the elevator myself. You have done more than you came to do." She looked at him. "Mr. Hale." "Yes." "I do not need you to walk me to the elevator." "All right. But you may walk me to the top of the stairs, if you'd like." "I'd like?" They stepped down off the platform together. They crossed the ballroom. The room had not gone back to its earlier shape. It had become something quieter, something more careful, the way a room is quieter after a storm has passed through it. Heads still turned, but the turning had a new character, not appraisal, not speculation. Something almost approaching respect, which was, in that specific ballroom, the rarest currency of all. They reached the marble staircase. Maya paused at its bottom. She turned to Dominic. "Mr. Hale." "Yes." "This will be the last time I see you for a while, I think." He looked at her. He did not protest. "I understand," he said. "I don't think you do. Not yet. But you might later." Tonight wasn't about us, Mr. Hale. It wasn't about you. It was about me, standing in a room without asking the room for a verdict. You said it yourself. I have been asking rooms for a verdict on me for 22 years. I'm done asking. That work I have to do by myself. It can't be done with anybody standing next to me. Especially not anybody who's going to keep reminding me every time he looks at me that he invited me to this ballroom for the wrong reasons. Maya, let me finish, please. All right. You're not a bad man, Mr. Hale. You're a man who has done bad things. Those are not the same. I don't know if you understand the difference yet. I hope you will. Because if you don't, the men around you will keep drowning whatever decent thing is inside you, and one day there won't be anything left to reach for. Mr. Crane has been reaching a long time. I don't know if he'll reach much longer. I'm not going to be another hand that reaches. I cannot afford to be. I have my own hands to take care of. I understand. I don't think you do, Mr. Hale, but you might. What will you do now, Miss Bennett? I don't know. Will you still work at the Meridian? I don't think so. May I? No. You may not. Not money, not a job, not an introduction, not a recommendation, not a car, not a thing. Mr. Hale, if I take one thing from you tonight, even a small thing, it will belong to you, and I don't want anything I have tonight to belong to you. I want it to belong to me. That is fair. It is. He looked at her for a long moment. His eyes in the low ballroom light were the color of a river at night again. She saw, in them, something she had not seen earlier. Not disappointment, not anger. Something closer to a slow, quiet grief. The particular grief of a man who has spent a decade telling himself he was happy, and who has just been shown, by a stranger in under 2 hours, that he has not been. Miss Bennett, yes. You are the most remarkable person I have met. She did not say thank you. She did not know how to, not to that. She said instead, honestly, Mr. Hale, if you change your life, do it because you want to. Not because of tonight, not because of me. People who change their lives for other people do not stay changed. That is the thing I needed you to know before I go. All right. Good night, Mr. Hale. Good night, Miss Bennett. She turned. She began to climb the marble staircase. The quartet, somewhere behind her, had not yet resumed. The ballroom was hushed, watching. She did not look back. At the top of the stairs, the steward in the white tails inclined his head to her with a small, genuine respect that had not been there 2 hours earlier. Madam, thank you. The elevator doors opened before she had pressed the button. Mr. Halim was inside. He had been, she understood, waiting. Miss Bennett? Mr. Halim. The lobby, ma'am. Yes, please. The doors slid closed. When she stepped out into the lobby of the Thornbury, Edmund was already standing at the revolving doors with her coat folded over his arm. Celeste was standing beside him. Celeste, in her jeans and her winter coat and her hair pulled back in a messy knot, looked wildly out of place in the polished gold lobby of the Thornbury Hotel, and she did not appear to care even slightly. Celeste, I couldn't stand it anymore. I took the train. Edmund said I could wait in the lobby. Celeste, are you okay? Maya stopped walking. The lobby was busy and not busy at the same time. A man in a tuxedo near the bell stand glanced at her twice before he looked away. Somewhere a woman laughed. The revolving doors turned slowly, bringing in cold November air from the street. Celeste, I'm okay. You sure? I'm sure. Celeste looked at her, hard, the way women look at each other when they have been worrying about each other for 5 straight hours without permission to say so. She searched Maya's face. She found what she was looking for. She exhaled, once, slowly, like a woman letting go of a breath she had been holding since 6:48. Okay, she said. Okay, get in the car. You look cold. Did you eat anything? Yes. Anything real? Aunt Louisa's rice. Good. Edmund had already opened the back door of the sedan at the curb. Edmund. Miss Bennett. Would you mind if my friend came home with me? Not at all, ma'am. Thank you. Celeste and Maya got into the back seat together. The door closed, cutting off the noise of the street. Edmund walked around, got in, looked at them in the rear view. Home, Miss Bennett? Home, Edmund. The car pulled away from the Thornberry. For the first 10 blocks, neither of them spoke. The city slid past the tinted window, lit storefronts, late taxis. A man walking a small dog in a plaid coat, a woman in front of a deli laughing into her phone with her hand over her mouth. Ordinary night, ordinary city. Celeste quietly said, "Maya." "Yeah." "What happened in there?" Maya thought about how to answer that. She thought about it for a long time. The car slowed for a red light. Somewhere outside, a siren passed, far off. "I told the truth," she said finally, "at a table full of men who have spent their whole lives being lied to. And I think I accidentally got asked to be their friend. And I think, Celeste, that the hardest thing I've done tonight was say no." Celeste looked at her for a long moment. Then she reached over, took Maya's hand, and squeezed it. She did not ask another question for the rest of the ride home. 3 weeks later, Maya Bennett walked into the Meridian for the last time. She walked in through the front door, not through the service entrance. She had thought about that choice for 4 days, and she had decided, in the end, that the front door was not about them. It was about her. She wanted to leave the building by a door she had not been permitted to use in 19 months. She wore her regular clothes, jeans, a sweater, her old coat. She had her last paycheck to pick up, and she had a letter folded in her pocket. Mr. Lowell was at the host stand. He looked up when she walked in. He went through 3 expressions in half a second: surprise, annoyance, calculation, and settled on a cautious, deliberate smile. "Miss Bennett, Maya, come in, come in. We've been hoping to see you." "Good morning, Mr. Lowell. I have your check in the back. And listen, Maya, let me say something before you go. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Whatever the reason for your absence, I'd like you to know that there is a place for you here. An expanded place. I spoke with the owner. We would like to offer you a shift supervisor role. A significant raise. Private dining priority. You understand?" She looked at him. "Mr. Lowell." "Yes, Maya." "No, thank you." I beg your pardon? I said no, thank you. I've brought my letter of resignation. I would appreciate my final paycheck. That's all." He stared at her. His smile did not hold. It never had, actually, when something surprised him. It had always been made of something that only held still for things he had already planned for. Maya, listen to me. I don't think you understand what I'm offering. This kind of position doesn't... Mr. Lowell, I'm 22 years old. I have been at your restaurant for 19 months. In 19 months, you have corrected the fraying of my collar, the height of my bun, the hem of my apron, and the volume of my voice. You have never once asked me how I was. I do not hold it against you. It is not, I think, a thing you do, but I'm not going to be a shift supervisor at your restaurant. I have another plan. I came to tell you so in person and to pick up my check and to leave the key to my locker with Raoul. Is my check in the office. He looked at her, and for a long, strange moment, his face was not the face of a man who managed a restaurant. It was the face of a man who had just realized something about himself that he had not known. He did not, she suspected, like what he had just realized. "I'll get your check." "Thank you." He went to the back. She stood in the host stand alone for one long moment. She looked at the dining room, the booths, the tables, the long oak service station, the velvet curtain of the private room at the back. She had seen this room for 19 months from a specific angle, and she was never going to see it from that angle again. She did not feel sad. She did not feel triumphant. She felt, more than anything, as if a long conversation she had been having with herself had simply ended. Raoul came out from the kitchen in his apron. He saw her. His face did something. "Bennett?" "Hi, Raoul." "You're leaving." "Yes." He walked across the dining room. He stopped in front of her. He did not hug her because Raoul was 61 and from somewhere in Guatemala he never talked about. And Raoul did not hug. He looked at her, though, for a long moment. "You walk good today," he said. She laughed, surprised. "I what?" "You walk. Into the door. Different. You walk good." "Raoul, you go do something now, yeah?" "Yeah." "Good." He nodded once, sharply. Then he reached into the front pocket of his apron and he pulled out a small, battered pocket notebook and he tore out a single page and he wrote something on it in block letters and he handed it to her. She looked at it. A name. A phone number. A neighborhood in Queens. "What is this?" My cousin, he know people. You need work someday, not waitress work. Call. Say Raul. He listen. Raul. Take, Bennett, is nothing. She folded the paper. She put it in her pocket. Her eyes did the hot thing for a second. She blinked them clear. Thank you, Raul. Go. Mr. Lowell came back with the envelope. He handed it to her, silently. She thanked him, quietly. She laid the letter of resignation on the host stand. She walked out through the front door. The bell over the door rang behind her. It was the sound she had heard 19 months of customers leaving by. It was the first time it had rung for her. She walked down the block in the late morning cold, and she did not count the streetlights. Aunt Louisa's cousin, it turned out, was a woman named Marisol, who ran a small scholarship office at a community college out in Queens. Raul had sent her, but when Maya arrived for the appointment, Marisol looked at her across the desk for a long moment and then said, in a dry voice, Celeste told me about you last week, and my sister called me yesterday about you, and Raul called me this morning. That is 3 people who don't usually call me. I assume I am supposed to be impressed. I don't know, ma'am. No, you don't. Sit down. Tell me what you want to do. Maya told her she had been thinking about it for 3 weeks. She wanted to go back to school. She had started, at 19, a community college program in social work. She had dropped out after her mother died because she could not afford both tuition and rent. She wanted to finish. And then she thought, to do something with young people who had aged out of the foster system. She was not sure yet what. She wanted to learn what from inside the work. Marisol took notes. She nodded. She asked 2 questions. She made 3 phone calls while Maya sat in the chair across from her. Then she looked up. Okay, here's what we're going to do. You take the placement exam Thursday. I'm pulling a scholarship application out of a drawer for you that I don't usually pull out for people I met 20 minutes ago because 3 people who don't call me called me. You fill it out this week. We get you enrolled for the spring semester. You work part-time at the campus library while you study. The library pays less than the Meridian, but you don't have to smile at men with their hands on your waist. You good with that trade-off, Miss Bennett? Yes, ma'am. Good. I'll see you Thursday. Maya left the office. She walked to the subway. She stood on the platform and watched a train come in, and she did not, for the first time in a long time, feel like she was waiting for her own life to start. It had already started. She had been inside it the whole time. 9 months passed. Maya passed the placement exam. She received the scholarship. She enrolled. She worked the campus library 3 evenings a week, shelving books and logging returns and watching students. She had not been 2 years ago do the things she had not been able to do 2 years ago. She did not make a lot of money. She did not need a lot of money. Celeste helped her find a smaller apartment in a better building out in Corona. Eli came over some weekends. He called her Aunt Maya. She taught him how to make paper airplanes that actually flew. He taught her a game he had invented involving a sock and a spoon. It was a very stupid game. They played it for 2 hours. She saw Aunt Louisa on Sundays. Aunt Louisa was teaching her, slowly, how to cook 3 things properly. Maya was bad at it. Aunt Louisa yelled at her with genuine pleasure. She did not hear from Dominic Hale. She did not expect to. She had asked him not to, in the language of everything she had said to him on the staircase. And Dominic Hale, whatever else he was, had proven to be a man who listened when someone told him something plainly. She heard about him occasionally. The city papers ran pieces now and then about the unexpected divestment of one of his companies from a particular holding, about a charitable trust he had set up in his late father's name that was not, a few journalists noted, the kind of trust that was usually set up as a tax shelter, the kind of trust that actually paid out, about a man named Anthony Russo who had, in late spring, quietly left the city and relocated to a coastal town Maya had never heard of, where he was, the papers said, pursuing other business interests. She read the pieces. She did not forward them to Celeste. She did not comment on them to Aunt Louisa. She read them and set them down. Benedict Crane sent her a card at Christmas. He had somehow gotten her new address. The card was simple. Miss Bennett, I hope this finds you well. You are, I suspect, finding yourself well. With my regards, B.C. She set the card on her refrigerator under the magnet from the community clinic. It was on a Saturday in late September, almost a year after the gala, that she saw him again. She had gone for a walk. It was that kind of afternoon. The sky was the clean-washed blue of early fall. The light was long. She had spent the morning working on a research paper and her eyes were tired, and she had put on her sneakers and a jacket and walked down to the little park at the edge of her neighborhood, the one with the old stone bench and the chess tables and the small pond that had 3 ducks in it when it had any ducks at all. She sat on the stone bench. She ate an apple. She watched a little girl in a yellow coat chase a pigeon for approximately 7 minutes without ever catching it. She watched the pigeon allow itself to be almost caught, over and over, with a kind of patient dignity. She did not hear him walk up. "Miss Bennet." She looked up. He was standing a few feet away. Not close. A respectful distance. He was in a dark coat, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. He had not shaved that morning. He looked, she realized with a small surprise, older than she remembered. Not old, just more lived in. The way a face looks when a man has spent 9 months having conversations with himself that he had not been having before. "Mr. Hale." "May I sit down?" "For a few minutes, yes." He sat down on the bench beside her. Not too close. He did not look at her. He looked at the little girl and the pigeon. "I'm not here by accident," he said. "I didn't think you were. But I'm not here to trouble you. I wanted to be very clear about that before I said anything else." "All right. I've been walking past this park on Saturdays for the last 5 weeks, not looking for you. I want to be honest about that too. I've been walking past this park because a woman I met once told me that people who change their lives for other people do not stay changed, and I have been trying, Miss Bennet, to change my life for myself. This park is on the way back from a meeting I have been going to on Saturday mornings. I walked past today and I saw you on the bench, and I stopped." She considered this. The little girl had lost interest in the pigeon. She was investigating a rock. "What meeting, Mr. Hale?" "A 12-step meeting." "For what?" "Alcohol officially, the other things unofficially." "I see. Mr. Crane suggested it 9 months ago. I laughed at him. 6 months ago I went once. I have been going every Saturday since. I don't speak. I listen." "That's a lot of listening." "Yes. It turns out I had a great deal of listening saved up." She almost smiled. She did not. "Mr. Hale, why are you telling me this?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because you were right, that night, on the staircase. You said I was not a bad man. I was a man who had done bad things. You said the men around me would drown whatever decent thing was inside me if I didn't do something. You said Mr. Crane was reaching and he wouldn't reach much longer. You were right about all of it. Mr. Crane retired in February. His health was not good. He still sends me letters. He is 78 years old, Miss Bennet. He has spent more of his life trying to keep me out of prison than he has spent with his late wife. That is a debt I do not know how to pay. I am trying to pay it now. I am trying to pay it by being, slowly, a man he would have retired earlier from." She looked at him. "Mr. Hale?" "Yes." "What are you asking me?" "Nothing. Nothing." "Nothing, Miss Bennet. I have not come here to ask you for anything. I have not come here to ask you to dinner. I have not come here to ask you to forgive me. I have not come here to ask you to tell me I am doing well. I have come here because I saw you on a bench, and because, sitting down next to you, I wanted you to know one time, directly from me and not from a newspaper, that I heard you that night. I have heard you every week since. That is all. I will stand up in a minute and walk away, and I will not walk past this park on Saturdays again if you would prefer I didn't." She was quiet for a long moment. She watched the little girl in the yellow coat pick up the rock. She watched the pigeon, finally safe, fly up to the top of a low wall. "Mr. Hale." "Yes." "What do you want your life to look like in 5 years?" He turned his head, finally, and looked at her. "I don't know yet," he said. "That is an honest answer. I know what I want it to not look like. I am still working on the positive version. That is a more honest answer than most people give." "Yes." "Good." She took a bite of her apple. She chewed. She swallowed. "You can walk past this park on Saturdays, Mr. Hale." "All right. I may or may not be on this bench. I understand. And if I am, and you want to sit down, you may sit down. For a few minutes, to say hello. Nothing more than that. Nothing more than that. I am not offering you a friendship. I am offering you a bench. Miss Bennet, a bench is more than I came here asking for." "Good. They sat in silence for a few minutes. He did not try to fill the silence. She noticed that. A year ago he would have. The silence was, in fact, the most honest thing that had ever passed between them. Finally, he stood up. "Miss Bennett?" "Mr. Hale." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Go do the work. And come back next Saturday if you want." "All right." He walked away. He did not look back. She watched him go, and she understood, watching the set of his shoulders, that she was not watching a man who had been saved by her. She was watching a man who was trying alone to save himself, and who had just been granted by a stranger the small permission to walk past a bench where he might occasionally be spoken to. That was what it was. That was all it was. And that, she thought, was as much as any woman should ever be asked to give to a man who had once made a bet on her. She finished her apple. She stood up. She walked home. The sun was low over the buildings. The light was the color of an old coin. She walked past a bakery and bought a small loaf of bread. She walked past a little girl in a yellow coat, still investigating her rock, and she smiled at her. The girl smiled back. At the corner of her street, she stopped. A streetlight had just come on. She counted, without meaning to, the number of streetlights between the corner and her new building. There were 6. She almost laughed at herself. 6 streetlights. She climbed the stairs to her apartment. She put the bread on the counter. She stood in her kitchen, a young woman of 23, in a small apartment that belonged, for the first time in her life, fully and only to her. The refrigerator had 3 magnets on it now. The community clinic, a photograph of Eli in a Halloween costume, and a single folded card from Benedict Crane. She stood there for a long moment. She thought about her mother. She thought about the pamphlet. Count of 8 in, count of 8 out. She thought about 17 streetlights on a wet October night, and the slap of a broken shoe on cracked pavement. She thought about a room full of 300 people, a marble staircase, a dress the color of dusk. She thought about Tony Russo, who had told a room that she was wallpaper. She thought about Aunt Louisa saying, "You have already lost the things they are afraid of losing." She thought about the little girl with the rock. She thought about how, for most of her life, she had believed that being small was a thing the world had done to her, and how she had learned, over the course of 1 gown and 1 staircase and 9 long months, that being small had, in the end, only been a thing she had done to herself in response to a world that had asked her to, and how the door out of smallness was not, as she had once thought, a grand door on the 42nd floor of a hotel. The door out of smallness was, it turned out, 1,000 smaller doors, each of them requiring a different kind of courage, most of them located in very ordinary places: in a bathroom at Celeste's apartment, in the spare bedroom of a 73-year-old woman in Bay Ridge, in a park bench in Corona, in the simple, unspectacular act of walking through the front door of a building one had always been required to enter through the back. The real lesson, she understood now, standing in her kitchen with her hand on the loaf of bread, was not that she had walked into a ballroom and changed a room. Rooms, in the end, were not the point. The real lesson was that no ballroom, no dress, no applause, no apology from any man had ever been required for her to be a whole person. She had been a whole person on the bus in the rain. She had been a whole person serving ribeye in a private dining room while 5 men talked about her like she wasn't there. She had been a whole person at 15 in a foster home, at 19 the morning after her mother died, at 22 in a kitchen with $163 to her name. The ballroom had not made her whole. It had only, for the first time, stopped a room full of people from pretending she wasn't. The work of the rest of her life, she understood, was to stop pretending it herself. She turned on the kettle. She made a cup of tea. She sat down at her small kitchen table next to the window, and she watched the sky turn from old coin to evening blue over the rooftops of a city that had, 1 year ago exactly, not yet known her name. Outside, someone laughed on the sidewalk. A bus hissed at a stop 2 blocks away. A streetlight hummed on. Maya Bennett picked up her pen and opened her notebook, and she began quietly to write her next week's lecture notes. And somewhere in the city, in a quiet apartment on a quiet street, an old lawyer named Benedict Crane set down his evening book, looked out at the same sky, and smiled to himself very faintly for no reason his housekeeper, when she came in to collect his tea tray, could identify. The city went on. The story, in the way that real stories go on, did too. But for Maya Bennett, the part of her life that had required being afraid was over. The part that came after The longer part, the quieter part, the part nobody would ever throw a gala to celebrate, was just beginning, and she was ready for it. She had, it turned out, been getting ready for it her whole life.